Good luck, have fun, and beat him, probably. We hulked this out! Put it in the blue stuff. Mutation complete. You must place that in a power field. It can't do it. Evolution complete. Minerals now! Get 'em! Not enough minerals. Minerals now! Get 'em! We evolved! Stuff got better. Not enough minerals. Minerals now! Get 'em! 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 Evolution complete. Evolution complete. Minerals now! Get them! We evolved! Stuff got better. Evolution complete.
But yeah, Neil Young is. I don't even think Neil Young actually owned his music, which was funny. I think it was just like a ploy. I mean, it's like I think he probably believed a lot of things he was saying. He was just misinformed. He just didn't understand that I was actually talking to people that were legitimate scientists that turned out they were right. Now we know.
Yeah.
But back then,
I don't even think
it was
Neil Young
like there
actually
was
owned
this
his music,
hysteria
which was
about
funny.
it, and a lot
I
of
think it was
people that
just
were
like
very
a
skeptical
ploy.
started tuning in.
I mean, it's
and then
like-
the whole fucking CNN thing when they turned me green, like all of that shit, that helped.
I don't know if I could have. Like, I'm not good. That people always go, if they're talking about you, it's good. All press is good press, but anytime anything negative comes out about me, it fucking devastates me. I could not have gone through what you went through.
You just don't. I just don't read it. If you don't
But
read
you don't
it,
like
you're
when
fine.
you like. How do you? Because like you come up in my news feed all the time, and I'm such a fucking idiot that if I'm scrolling through Google News and I see my name, I go, oh, what's that? And then I'm like, God damn it.
You can't do that.
Last time I did this show, greatest experience, great hang, lucky streaming #1 on Netflix. I'm so fucking happy. I'm in my bed going, things are going good for the big guy. Hit on Google News and it's like, picture of me and you. I was like, Bert Kreischer, Joe Rogan. And they're like, Bert Kreischer ruins the Joe Rogan podcast. I'm like, motherfucker. And it was an MMA fucking journalist. And I was like, wait, why? God damn it. And I was like, ugh. And then you see it and you're like, well, it can't be that bad. I'm going to read it. And they're like, oh my God. But then my daughter, Georgia, said something very profound to me. She was like, why would you allow that? And I'm sure that guy will write that same article after this episode. She goes, I'm sure he will. I think the guy also has a fucking football feed. He said I ruined the. Anytime I do something, there's someone that says Bert Kreischer ruined it, and I'm the only one that reads it. And my daughter Georgia literally looked at me and goes, "Did you have fun with Joe?" I went, "Yeah, I had a blast. I love being around Joe." She was like, "Then fuck it." She goes, "Your experience is the one that matters the most." She goes, "What? Why would you allow someone to dictate your memory of an event?" And I was like, "Oh, who the fuck raised you?" I was like, "I don't know."
Well, you were on the road. She probably raised herself. That's why she's so wise. She had to form her own opinions.
She had to read books?
Yeah, she had to actually form her own opinions and think about things rationally. Having a father like you, yeah, you can't pay attention because the vast majority of people live miserable lives. That's Thoreau's quote. Most men live lives of quiet desperation. There's a lot of people out there that are very, very sad, very unhappy, and looking to make something negative. They're always looking to be a critic, which is fine. That's their prerogative. But it's not. You don't have to read it.
Well, I'm at the place now. Like I took Google News. I took all Google and everything off my phone because the series premiered, and I didn't want to get good or bad. I was like,
good,
because you can't quantify the good. Like if you're gonna listen to the good, you got to listen to the bad. And I was like, well, I don't want to hear the bad, so I just want to hear the good. And then Jamie and I were talking about this outside, but like you have a social media team who's posting like your claps, like they're posting like the nice articles, and I'm like, don't even post that because like I don't even just stay out of it. Just if people like it, let them like it, and if they
let
don't,
people have their own opinions. That's the best move. I don't have anybody that does that. I don't have any of that.
Do you
shit.
post all your own stuff on Instagram?
Yeah, on Instagram, if I post it, it's from me.
Really?
Yeah, always. Yeah. And then there's the Joe Rogan Experience page that the staff does, but that is just a clip from the podcast. They take an interesting clip where someone says something, it's put up with no context. It just says, episode, blah, blah, blah. That's it. I try to do it as like natural and neutral. You like it, you don't like it. If you don't like it, don't listen to the next one. It's okay.
So wait, what is the impetus for you to post something when at what point do you decide to share your life?
Well, I just feel like if there's something I think someone will think is interesting or something that I would like to see, if someone puts it on their feed, I'll put it in there every now. But I don't post that much.
You don't?
Because I don't read that much. I stay off. I don't think it's good for you. I think it's not only do I not think it's good for you, I think it's genuinely bad for you. And it gets in the way of all the other stuff that I like to do. I'm busy, man. I'm busy. There's a lot of interesting shit to pay attention to in the world. I'm not one of those things. I don't like paying attention to me, and reading me, and I don't want to go online and see too many car crashes and people getting shot and animal attacks. Tommy and I have the worst fucking text message chain. Him and I all day, whenever he finds something like unbelievably horrific, some guy getting run over by a truck, he'll just send it to me, and then I'll send it to him. And we're always trying to one-up each other. So when I find something absolutely horrible, if someone says me something absolutely horrible, I send it to him. And then that's like my main source of like trauma online is my Tom Segura text message chain. But other than that, I pretty much stay off. I don't think it's good for you. And I feel way better. I started doing it a few months ago. It's like a force of habit. Like I'm looking at it all the time. Let me just not look at it today. Yeah. And then I did it another day and another day. I'm like, God, I feel better. I feel better. Like I genuinely feel better. It's like I'm getting over a cold or something like that. And so I said, all right, well, obviously, like engaging. Definitely don't read anything. Like definitely don't like read when people say things about you. Yeah. Definitely don't read when you post something, read the comments. Don't do any of that. You know, people get wrapped up in it and you realize like people are just trying to take you down. Not all of them. A lot of people are supporting you. But it doesn't matter if there's like 10 people that love you and one person that hates you. You're going to think about that one person, you know, which is nuts. But it's just human nature.
It's crazy how that algorithm works is that it's just like if there's someone in the front row that's not laughing. Like last night I had it was at the bottom of the barrel, and I don't know how rape came up, but...
It always does.
And I was like, well, there's no phones in here. Let's go. If I'm going to go for it, it's in this room.
Right.
And there was a woman that did not like it. And she was a little vocal in the crowd. You know, the bouncer was like, yo, you know, let him, you know, he's working this out or whatever. And then she's like, I was told to shut up. And then in the rest of the night, I'm watching her out of the corner of my eye going, God damn it. And then I just dug holes and holes and holes. And then at one point, the whole audience is chanting rape. And I'm like, guys, this is bad. But it's funny. And then also it's like, listen, say you're some fucking dude looking for a connection in life, and you go to my page and you leave 100 comments. And they're like, you're the best, Bert. I love you. When you come to Cincinnati, I'm going to be here. Tampa, I'll be there, man. I'm going to drive. And then the one time he's like, you're a fucking bitch. And then I reply. He's like, oh, I guess that's how I get the cat to come outside. You know? So that's why I don't read any comments.
Whitney was going into, you know, the Whitney thing about Miss Rachel. I didn't know who Miss Rachel is.
I found out who she is today. 1.8 billion views on how to say mom and dad. And I was like, it makes sense, man.
Well, she's an educator for neurodivergent kids. Is that what it is?
Yeah, I watched a couple of videos.
Pull up some videos of Miss Rachel, because after people were dragged. By the way, the worst fucking people were going after her.
Really?
People that I know that are comedians that are just unbelievably shitty, dishonest, disingenuous human beings, bad faith communicators, people that just like completely distort anything about the person.
Yeah.
And it's just because she's successful. It's a giant part of it. And so they see her making some crack about Miss Rachel because she was watching it with her kid. She didn't know what the fuck it is. So here's Miss Rachel. Let me hear what this sounds like.
And
I don't hear it, Jamie.
two really special guests.
No. No, not at all.
Dinosaur
I don't hear it.
eggs.
I don't hear anything in my own microphone.
Can you help me count them?
Do you hear it?
Thank
Well, I don't hear you, Bert. There we go.
1,
There we go.
2, 3, 4. 4 must be the number of the day. The dinosaur eggs are hatching. Wow, how many dinosaurs do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, pause. Why would you go after this? Like, this is like a little kid show.
Yeah,
Like, she must have been bored.
There's nothing different from this in Blue's Clues, in my opinion.
It's a show for little kids.
Yeah.
Like, I don't get it.
I don't know. Maybe she was just
She was
trying.
bored.
She was trying to write a joke and thought she'd get some traction, I guess.
Maybe she took 2 instead of 1. And then she got a little extra energy. She took 2 instead of 1. I don't know what she's doing. All of a sudden, she's like, fuck Miss Rachel.
She took 2
But then she
instead of
started
1.
responding to people because she didn't understand what it was, she said, and then she took it down and apologized. But you can't apologize to the mob. They come for you. They come for you. And she learned. And I texted her. I said, listen, I love you to death. You got to stop going back and forth with these people. You can't do that. It's not, this is not a genuine conversation. They don't care if you're, like, if you were a person and you were someone's friend and you started shitting on Miss Rachel and someone said, actually, that's like for kids with learning disorders. and you'd be like, "Oh, fuck, I didn't know,"
Yeah.
and that would be the end of it.
Yeah.
And then we'd laugh, But these people are not looking for a real conversation. They're just looking to destroy your life. And then so many people like, she lost her career, career's over. Like, what? But you weren't going to see her anyway, you fucking cunt. Like, what are you talking about? You weren't going to pay to see her anyway. Stop saying her career's over. It is not doing a damn thing to her career. You just want it to be over because you live a miserable fucking life, which is why you're on Threads 12 hours a day.
It's so funny you say that. I just read something negative about Whitney on Threads today, and I was like, what did she do?
Bro, Threads is the worst.
And then I saw the Miss Rachel shit, and I watched the video. I had 2 kids. I don't know. I look at that as I go, that's nice.
If Threads is like for people who already been like humiliated on Twitter and they're trying to find a new crowd.
Yeah.
It's very weird. Very, very, like, so much negativity. Not that Twitter isn't. Like, Twitter's super negative, too.
I haven't been on X.
I try to look at the news only. I try to look at news and things that people are exposing that's in the news, which is very interesting. Speaking of which, what was that thing that you found? So this is very strange. This is about people being able to communicate
whether or not
in
it's
lucid dreaming.
True, I guess. We'll find out later. But
Scientists report first ever communication between 2 humans during sleep.
Oh, I love this.
Scientists say that science fiction may be coming closer to reality. According to reports, a California startup claims it successfully enabled two-way communication between people while they were lucid dreaming. Participants were asleep in separate locations while researchers monitored their sleep and transmitted a coded word designed to be perceived inside a dream without waking them. The system reportedly relied on sensors, wireless communication, and specialized software to detect dream states and relay the message. The company's founder says that what once sounded like science fiction could soon become a part of daily life. No independent but they're not saying what happened. No independent scientific replication has confirmed the results yet. Still, the experiment builds on real research showing that interaction between lucid dreams is possible. Yeah, but what is the interaction?
the coded word, I guess, is
Did they relay the coded word to each other? They both got the coded word?
that's where I started getting into weird space. But I found out this was posted on Instagram like yesterday or something.
Uh-huh.
I googled it. Press release was from 2024.
Breakthrough from REM space, first ever communication between people in dreams. So this is the article about it in Business Wire. Lucid dreams occur, blah, blah, blah.
happened, I guess.
Participants are sleeping in their homes. Brain waves and other polysomnographic data were tracked remotely. Specially designed, developed apparatus. When the server detected the first participant entered a lucid dream, it generated how do they detect that someone's in a lucid dream? Because a lucid dream is a dream where you're aware that you're dreaming.
Yes.
It generated a random Remyo word and sent it to him via earbuds. Participant repeated the word in his dream with his response captured and stored on the server. What? 8 minutes later, the next participant entered a lucid dream. She received the stored message from the first participant and confirmed it upon awakening. Huh.
So
I'm
that's-
not-
yeah.
It's a little
It sounds like
vague.
they're saying it in the room and the person's grabbing it.
No, they're sending it through earbuds.
Yeah, they were both in their own houses, it said at the time.
Yeah. So they receive it through earbuds. He says it in the dream, and then she receives it.
No.
Huh. Well, you gotta wonder what is happening in dreams. Dreams are very bizarre.
Have you ever lucid dreamed?
Yeah. Not. I mean, I've done it a couple of times, but I haven't on purpose. And I've always wondered why not. Like, why haven't I read books on lucid dreams? Why haven't I tried to do it?
I think it's something that just happens.
No, you could actually do it. You could. There's guys that practice lucid dreaming.
I lucid dream pretty extensively.
Yeah.
Like ever since I remember when you came out with Alpha Brain, you're one of the first things you said it would help with lucid dreaming.
Oh, if you take it before bed, it definitely helps with lucid dreaming.
Yeah, and I remember saying I didn't know what lucid dreaming was at the time, and then I found out I was lucid dreaming, and I've lucid dreamed my whole life. But now that once I knew what it was, I could stay in a dream and decide, and I could go back into dreams. I could restart a dream that I just had, go back to sleep, and I'm going back in.
Really?
Yeah. It sounds crazy, and I know it sounds like horseshit, but
No,
I never
it
knew what it
doesn't-
was.
it
I never
doesn't
knew what it
sound like
was
horseshit.
until Alpha Brain.
There's actual techniques that people practice, and apparently they give classes and courses on how to do lucid. There's books written on it. Because there's real techniques on how to lucid dream. I just never. I don't know why. Like but when I'm tired, I just want to go to sleep. I go hard all day.
Yeah.
And when I crash, I just crash. I don't want to be fucking around and experimenting while I'm sleeping. I just want to go to sleep.
But my lucid dreams primarily are either like I realize I'm dreaming. I go, oh, I'm asleep. I'm dreaming. This isn't real. Oh shit, I'm in control. And
Right.
then a lot of times it has to do with fucking. Like I'm like, oh, I don't have to put a condom on. This is great. This is fucking. I'm gonna bang all these fucking chicks in this room. And then one time I had a lucid dream where I was like, I knew I was dreaming. I was outside. I had to go up these steps into like an old cottage, at one of those old Hollywood cottages. And I was like, I gotta have sex with anyone I want. And in my dream, I was like, oh, pick your wife. How cool is that? And then I
That's
went
what
into
you
this
decided
cottage.
to do?
I know I fucked my
How
wife.
cool is that?
I know I could have fucked her in real life. And then, but a lot of my dreams back in the day when I first started lucid dreaming, I would always decide to fly.
Mm.
And I remember I had one right after the first time I ever tried Alpha Brain. I had one, and I was doing a photo shoot on Melrose, and I was like, I don't want to be here. And then I was like, wait, I'm dreaming. This isn't real. I was like, I'm gonna fly home. And so I just leapt up in the air, started flying over Hollywood, and then over the hills. And then I was like, wait, I have no idea. I have no frame of reference for where I am. I was like, it's getting dark. And I was like, oh, where's the 101? And then in the dream, I was just kept flying. And then I'll wake up shortly thereafter, but it's a lot of sex and a lot of flying.
A lot of people breathe underwater in their dreams.
Never breathe underwater.
Yeah, they breathe underwater in their dreams. They fly. Flying's like really common.
I used to have like crazy fucking dreams, like wild. I sold a TV show to Comedy Central about my dreams. Like I've had dreams where I wake up laughing. I've had dreams where I wake up crying. Like I have such insane fucking dreams. But no one ever wants to. No one ever wants to hear. I would have joke dreams, like real joke dreams. Like I had a dream. This is a real dream I had, where I was on stage, and I was in a dance position like this. And I know this sounds horseshit. It's a real dream. And the curtain's drawn, and I look around, and I see I'm standing on stage with 4 or 5 dudes that are all in Klan outfits. And I'm like, oh fuck. And I look down and I realize I'm in a Klan outfit. And I'm like, motherfucker. And I'm like, I gotta get off stage, and the curtains draw back, and it's an all black people. And I hear the voice of God go, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for the Click Clack Klan. And we started tap dancing. And we were so good that the black people got to their feet and they started cheering. And we're like, oh my God. And so, yeah, that was a real dream. I woke up and I wrote it down. I used to write down all my dreams, voice text them. I used to voice text them all. I'd have dreams about you and Stanhope and Joey Diaz. Like it was like my whole world. I used to think to myself, like I'd dream about Shaq the other day. I was like, I wonder if Shaq ever dreams about me.
I bet he doesn't.
I bet he doesn't. Who's someone you've had a dream about recently?
I don't really have too many dreams about people, not people that I know.
What are your dreams about?
My dreams are weird, man.
Like, let's dig into this.
I had a dream that I came on the podcast I had to talk about because it was the absolute strangest, most realistic dream of my life. And it was a dream where I encountered these beings that were not human. And it was insanely realistic. They were very human-like. I think there was 4 of them. They were tall and thin, and they didn't look human. Their heads were too big. Their eyes are too big. And I can't remember. I think they had teeth. I don't remember. But I remember they were joking with me. Like, they scared me, and they're like, just fucking around. Like, trying to get me comfortable with who they are. And they were communicating with me somehow or another through thoughts. And I was really freaked out because they seemed very, very real. It didn't seem like any other dream that I had. So much so that I woke up at like 3:30 in the morning and I just lay in bed for an hour trying to go back to sleep, and I couldn't go back to sleep. I was almost like, I'm not sleep. I'm wide awake.
Yeah.
And so I went to the gym, and I just worked out at 4 in the morning, and I worked out for like 2 hours. And after it was over, I got in the sauna, did the whole thing, and then I came to work. I was like, I have to talk about this right away because it was so strange. It was one of the only dreams that I've ever had that did not feel at all like a dream. It felt like I was encountering someone or something that was trying to get me comfortable with the idea of encountering them. It wasn't.
Wow.
It wasn't like a dream. I was in the corridor of something that seemed like it was not like it was from here. It was like from somewhere else, but it was almost like it was very oddly lit. Like the walls were lit in a very strange way, but it was almost like it was this corridor, but it had a feeling almost like it was organic, like it was alive, like it was a living thing. It was very fucking strange.
What if that was? But what if that is something that you did, in fact, an experience that was taken out of your memory, and then it's stuck in your memory, and you're dreaming about it?
I don't know. I mean, you could maybe all day long, right? And so my feeling was that I had, and this is again, it clearly I was dreaming, right? So it clearly could have been just a dream. But what it felt like was that it was an actual encounter with intelligence that wasn't human. That's what it felt like. And it felt like these things were not us, and maybe they were what a human will be someday, because they were human-like, but they were very slender, they were very thin, and they were wearing these suits that were like almost like rash guards, like what surfers wear, but a strange fabric. Like it looked weird, and it was the color of their skin, but it was clear that they were wearing something. It didn't appear that they had any genitals. They had no muscle tone at all. They were just thin, and they were communicating with me and looking at me, and they were close, like where you are right now. And I think, like I said, I think it was at least 3 of them. I think there was 4 of them, but I remember there was one that was going like and then like joking around with me, like trying to scare me.
Yeah.
And then and it felt to me after they did it like, relax, like this is okay, like don't be freaked out. Whatever this is, don't be freaked out. And then I woke up. And when I woke, and then there was also this weird reptilian element of it. There was like a barrier. They had a barrier, and they were feeding, they were like pouring food to these things that almost like was letting me know the protection between you and this horrific danger that's out there in the world, in the universe, in life, it's very thin. There's very thin protection. There's not much protection. It was just like a barrier, like a simple barrier, like a fucking blockade they put to keep a crowd from passing through an area to let you know you're not supposed to go here.
It's crazy how crazy how much how long ago did you have this dream?
A few months ago.
But isn't it so wild that something that didn't happen can be locked in your memory, and then you're like, God, it affects you almost like it did.
Well, now it's like a memory of my recollection of the memory, which is odd, which is memories in general, which is why people distort memories and change them and make the past something that's not real. You've talked to people that, yeah, we all do it.
I do it on podcasts.
Yeah, everybody does it. But this was different. Whatever this dream was, I mean, look, there's a lot of confusion about what happens during sleep. We don't exactly know why you have dreams and what's the function of it, what's the purpose of it. But this one was different. It was much more realistic than any dream I had ever experienced before. Like the interaction between me and these creatures, these beings, was very different than anything I'd ever experienced in a dream. The point, like, I felt it physically. And I woke up. I can sleep on a bag of rocks. I can just go to sleep, dude. It drives my wife crazy because she struggles to sleep. And if we got on a plane, I just cock out because I'm always going. So like when it's downtime, I don't have a problem sleeping, dog. I can go to sleep. I'll sleep on a roof. I can sleep. I couldn't go back to sleep, which is really weird for me. I mean, I was wide awake at 4 a.m, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to the gym, because I laid in bed for a whole hour trying to go back to sleep, saying it's just a dream, just go to sleep. I'm like, dude, just get up, you're not going to sleep. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm up, I'll just go work out, like maybe that'll help me go to sleep. Nope. I was wide awake. I wasn't even, most of the time when I'm working out, I'm either watching music or watching fights on TV. I didn't even do that. I was just by myself in silence trying to make sense of it. Just doing chin-ups and dips and trying to make sense of whatever the fuck that was. Because it just didn't seem like a dream. it felt so real. It felt so real. And when I've talked to like my UFO friends, from like Jesse Michaels, who's like really into UFOs, he's like, I think you had a real encounter. I'm like, I don't know. You know, I don't know what it was, but it certainly felt like a real encounter, whatever it was.
Do you listen to anything while you sleep, or you sleep in the silence?
No.
Oh, I listen to podcasts, so I'll have dreams.
While you're sleeping?
Always.
That's
always.
so ridiculous.
I listen to.
That's so unhealthy.
I listened to a podcast about Rasputin last night.
You ever see his dick? They have his dick pickled in a jar.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Dude, he was the.
The guy was
he was just fingering chicks.
Are you sure?
I don't know.
I think he was fucking.
It's not in
with
the
a giant hog like that. I think he's put it to use. Find Rasputin's hog.
But he was. That's what he did. I would love to see his dick.
You'll see it. That's his dick.
God!
Look at the size of that hog. By the way, that's limp and dead. Imagine what that thing looked like when it was hard. Look at that look on that guy's face. Look at the size of this cock. Look at this cock. Big old fucking pickled.
That's a big dick.
I mean, like, again, this is like a dead man's dick. So there's no blood in it at all. Imagine what that thing was like hard. Big old Russian dick. Big old axe handle.
Thank God that wasn't my dream.
So he was, he was like, what does it say? Rasputin's alleged genitals were sold in 2000 for $8,000, still surrounded by mystery, with some experts believing it might actually belong to a bull. Shut up.
They had a hard time killing him.
Yeah, they tried to poison him, right?
And they'd shoot him at the end and then throw him in the fucking river.
Well, Russians are different white people.
Ah, that's the joke I missed last night.
What?
There was in the bottom of the barrel. They were like Trump versus Putin, and I was like, and I was thinking about Rasputin, but I was like, Russians are hard to kill, and then I just went on to fucking.
What was his thing? He was like a spiritual advisor.
Oh, Joe, that's a great topic.
Something.
I'll tell you everything you know.
Yeah, he was a self-described holy man.
He was from
1869 to 1966.
He was from Siberia.
So he gained significant influence with Tsar Nicholas II after 1905, rapidly earning the trust of both Nicholas himself and his wife, Alexandra. He became a healer, in quotes, for their hemophiliac son, Alexei.
What was happening was Alexei was getting given aspirin by the doctors. And Rasputin came in and was like, yo, get the doctors away from him. And he was a hemophiliac. He had internal bleeding. And when they removed the aspirin, which is a blood thinner, the kid started to heal. And so the Tsarina said, he's magic. Even like at one point the kid was going to die and he wrote a letter and he said, tell your kid's going to be fine. I had a dream about it, but get the doctors out of there. And the doctors were always giving him aspirin, and that was what was injuring the kid. They're all the royalty at that time were hemophiliacs.
What?
Yeah, because of the inbreeding. That's why they didn't have chins.
God.
They had long noses, and they were all hemophiliacs.
Oh, God.
And
dude.
so...
I know London. People pay.
Yankees leading 7-6 here in the 8th inning. Red Sox have runners at first and second and one out.
We're going to pinch hit for you here with Abreu, okay? We got it here, okay? Let's go. Vamos. Willie!
He's going to face a pinch hitter, Wilyer Abreu.
Pinch hitting for O'Neill, number 52, Wilyer Abreu.
A lot of confidence to take out O'Neill, a big popper who can go over the monster.
I'll tell you why. His grandmother is about to pass away today or tomorrow. Yeah.
Alex Cora loves Wilyer Abreu, and this is a big move.
He came in today devastated. It's been going on for a week. I was like, you know what?
Drive base hit, centers are up. He'll score at least one. It's 7-7 on a pitch hit double by Wilyer Abreu.
This is not show up during the weekend and perform. This is every day, over and over and over and over again. It's not always about your swing or your defense or your base running. It's about how you feel. You know, what you got tonight? How's the family doing?
Okay, babe, fire in there.
Okay. A little outside there, sorry.
That's all right. It's a good swing, though.
That's a good swing.
I got a good feeling about this one.
All right.
You have to have a short memory to be good in this game because it is so tough and it'll eat you alive if you don't let things go.
You want to come in the turf? Come on.
I've been swinging a bat since I could stand up.
What's up, Will? How you doing? Nice to see you.
I dedicated my life to this game. It's tough when you go up there because you're vulnerable. You can do everything right and still have a bad result.
God damn it, man. What am I doing out there, man? What the fuck, man? What am I doing, man? Damn you, Tristan. Get a fucking grip, kid. Jesus Christ. God damn, you can't beat me with anything. He's going 90 miles a fucking hour, man. Get a swing off. Pathetic.
It's a bad feeling when you feel like you're the reason why you're losing. But, you know, the life away from the field can't be affected by the results on it.
High and deep into right field, back at the bullpen. It's a two-run homer.
They look like a sloppy minor league team like they looked like a year ago. Let's just, pull the plug on the sucker right now.
I have no hope for this team because mentally they don't have it. They're a weak group. They just don't have it.
So much of baseball is psychological. Like, you just get in that head of yours. All these guys have talent. It's about who can withstand the mental grind.
It's you against that guy. Nobody else. You can become very lonely.
It's a game of failure. You're gonna fail and you're gonna get humbled.
The 162 games is unrelenting. When you are struggling day after day after day.
That level of intensity is hard to understand unless you're there.
These guys mask this stuff so well until it has to come out.
Fans have heard and read all about these guys, but you do wonder, what are they really like inside? What makes them tick? What makes them afraid? What motivates them?
The numbers don't tell you the whole story. People don't understand what this is. Not only the big leagues, but the Boston Red Sox and this city. This is more than baseball.
I think we should focus on Baron von Steuben. What an interesting character he is.
I was just researching him last
Isn't he
night.
fascinating?
Dude, that guy is crazy.
I love him.
If
I
he
love
went
him.
to Washington, people in the shape, dude. They were a mess.
Oh, I know. Crazy. Well, I'll see you guys later. Yeah, definitely. Well, see you later. Bye.
Okay, gather round, all of ye. I'm going to be your guide today. My name is Jeremiah Poop, and yes, that is my real last name, and yes, high school was fun. But welcome to Boston. In a way, the revolution begins right here on Boston Common. This is where the British soldiers began their march to Lexington and Concord on that fateful day when the first shots of the revolution were fired. So, without further ado, let us begin our march into American history, and let us now go forth and see historic stuff this way.
Well, they like you.
There was this long history of failure. It came to identify the Red Sox. So there was a lot of negativity attached to never winning, having last won a championship in 1918, all the years that the Red Sox fell short. That was the theme. This franchise, it's haunted, it's cursed.
Well, the old world may be dead. Welcome to the old Granary Burying Ground, which no graveyard in Boston has more notable figures buried in it than this one. And I still love the old world. Across the street, the Beantown Pub happens to be the only place in the world where you can sit drinking a cold Sam Adams while looking at a cold Sam Adams. You like that? I made that myself, actually.
The Red Sox are 1 out away from winning it all.
In 2004, they won the World Series for the first time in 86 years.
The Boston Red Sox are world champions. Next year is finally here.
After winning in 04, they won again in 07.
And the Red Sox are world champs again.
They won again in 2013. And they won as recently as 2018. Which might be the best Red Sox team in history. No team has won 4 times in the 21st century the way the Red Sox have. But after winning in 2018, it's been downhill.
We were successful last year. This year, not that much.
In 2020, they trade Mookie Betts. Betts was and remains one of the best players in the game.
How dumb are the Boston Red Sox to let Mookie Betts go?
But since then, 3 last place finishes in the span of 4 years.
This was a special place for the Puritans where they socialized and enjoy if the weather was nice, and also where they would punish you if you broke their very strict rules.
Just another ugly one. An absolutely miserable weekend at Fenway Park.
So the Puritans were nasty, and if they caught you smiling at someone or laughing at anything, you were caught being drunk in public, you could be thrown in the stocks. You've seen those where your head and arms go through. Everybody got put in there a few times. Still the 50s, everyone would come down and they would make fun of you. They'd spit in your face. They'd throw rotten fruits and vegetables at you.
Here comes a pizza, see it?
I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you. The Puritans were not very nice people.
We all know where we are in the standings. It's a painful reality.
You have passion for sports all over the place. It just manifests in a very different way in New England. For so many people, for so many generations, it's been more than just an entertainment product. It's been part of their identity, and I feel like there is anger about the direction that the team is taking.
I can't name half the team anymore. The team still sucks. Bottom line, that's it. It's simple as that.
There's still a very passionate fan base here, but they need to see results.
Give me a better fucking Boston team.
There is a lot of pressure to turn things around here.
Give me the fucking Red Sox of 04, of 15, of 18. Give me all that fucking shit. It's all about Boston. Fuck the Yankees. Fuck the Yankees.
The fan base, they're getting angry at the whole thing. We have to be better. It's on us.
Right there, TL. I'm now. I'm now. Got used to this. Oh! Sniper.
Do you believe this is a playoff team?
I think it's kind of foolish to make predictions like that. I think this is going to be a very competitive team. There's a really exciting young core of players that we are really, really excited about, and I think that fans are going to fall in love with.
Most experts do not believe that this is a playoff team. This is a team that has finished last 3 of the last 4 years. That isn't the factor they once were.
Everyone predict them to be in last place, but this team is relying on young players, and young players can be unpredictable.
Sometimes you can win with young talent. That hasn't historically happened in Boston. And if that's the plan that the Red Sox are banking on, everything needs to go right.
Hey, but who's better? LeBron or Jordan? LeBron or who? Jordan. Final shot, Jordan. Yeah. But just overall career, and it's incredible.
He's not a young cub anymore, and he's still absolutely dominating. Like
his body must feel awful, huh?
Yeah. Hey, Huddy. I already know Huddy's answer.
LeBron or Jordan?
Come on, bro. That's not even a question, right?
Career, obviously you would want LeBron's career. He's got a pretty...
Griffey or Trout?
Griffey or Trout? Well, I mean, Griffey got hurt, but... I mean, they're both got hurt, but I'd pick Trout.
It's the same thing, see? You're too young.
They're trying to build around a lot of these young players, and Jaren Duran is part of this young core. He struggled mightily in the first couple years, really, when he came up.
Bases loaded here in the third. Sends a drive to deep center, but where is it? And it's way over the head of Duran, who never saw it. He never saw it. Tapia around third, heading home. And inside the park, grand slam. Wow. You're looking for low point to this Red Sox season, Mike. You got one right here. This is just embarrassing.
I was just that young, nervous kid that like didn't want to mess up. I was trying to be so perfect that I would mess up.
Duran strikes out.
Durant fighting that sun.
No.
And loses the base.
If Duran is going to be a good Major League outfielder, he's got a lot of work to do.
I'd get messages after game on Instagram telling me to kill myself. Like, you're not worth shit. Don't ever come back.
Coming off of a really rough 2022 season, he had this transformational year last year.
Instantly, I could tell, like, yeah, this is different. It was like a stepping stone of like, all right, like, I can fucking do this.
And defensively, that's huge.
He plays hard. He's naturally very fast. He has great raw speed. He can fly. Any ball that's hit into the outfield has the potential to be a double for him.
One of the things that Lou Merlone says is that he runs like he's angry at the ground. And I just think that's a perfect description of the way that he plays the game.
Like, oh, he runs like he's angry at the ground. He runs sideways. He runs like a lizard. The lizard one's definitely stuck. I have so many memes people send me of a lizard running. Hey, this guy's making fun of my run.
You don't run like a lizard anymore.
You don't do that.
He made huge strides in 2023, and for 2 or 3 months looked like one of the best outfielders in baseball. That was followed by a season-ending injury.
Duran's come out of the game. Left toe contusion is what forced him out of the game.
There was a lot of unknown about Jaren Duran going into 2024. He had been this dynamic offensive player last year, but not one who could sustain it for a long time. I think in a lot of ways, this is going to be a make or break season for Jaren Duran. He acknowledged last year that he had dealt with depression and anxiety.
I fucking suck, Duran. Fucking dumbass. Fucking piece of shit.
And it seemed like he was besieged by these demons telling him that he wasn't good enough.
Old JD would have been like, God, you fucking suck, you stupid piece of shit. Now I'm like, oh, they pitched me good. You still fucking suck, but they pitched you good.
Can he take all his gifts and tools and abilities and capitalize on them and not succumb to negativity and fear of failure?
Fuck!
This is a draining game. It demands a lot of you mentally. Just having the physical tools and talents and abilities isn't enough.
All you need is
Heads up on field one.
one good swing a day, though. You know?
Still looking for mine.
Sorry, guys, I can't get everybody. I'll try to get y'all later, all right?
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Trevor. Appreciate you.
Tristan Casas. Tell me what he's like.
He's different. I remember before his major league debut, Tristan Casas went out into right field, took his shirt off, and started sunning himself while also performing some yoga. And a member of that team looked out into right field and said, "What the fuck is this?"
I don't have to think anything. Swing is really good. Be with him. Get him in the zone. If the ball comes to me, I'd fly.
I think he is uniquely, almost defiantly himself.
Tristan Casas is gonna watch it leave the yard.
I don't drink coffee or energy drinks. I solely think I get my energy from the earth.
You were stranded on an island and you can only bring one teammate. Who would you bring and why?
I'll bring Duran because he's fast. You know, maybe I could eventually eat him because he's muscular and I'm sure his tendons and his ligaments taste good.
That one's it.
I like the glitter right here.
Most of us have a hard time understanding what is real, what's an act, what is performative, and what's not.
Pretty much anything that bothers people, I want to do out there.
Is that why you paint your nails?
That's exactly why.
Because you like when people are like, oh.
I love it.
You're very comfortable in your own skin, and we've seen some of your skin, right? You like to lie on the ground before games, suntan, etc.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a certain amount of energy that the earth emits that you can absorb from the sun. There's a process behind everything that I do.
I would love to stay here forever. I don't want to know another team, but we have so many young players coming up that they might not need a player like me. If it was in my control, I would have demanded a contract to stay here my whole life. Ooh, you snap, Stephanie.
You feel better?
Go off, queen.
There is this unspoken rule in the sport of baseball that you can be different if you produce. And I think if you don't, then all of a sudden all the eccentricities and the personality comes under greater scrutiny.
Tristan Casas can hit a walk-off home run in Game 7 of the World Series. And then the next day he can do yoga in the middle of the field, naked. And nobody's gonna say shit.
Yes, I feel back.
My whole life is the game, really. Sometimes I struggle with knowing what my purpose is throughout all this. I got my athletic genes from my mom. She, left a little too early, and I don't know directly if I'd be speaking to you right now in this chair if she were alive. At the time that it happened, my dad's dealing with his loss, I'm dealing with mine. We're all grieving in our own way, but we needed a distraction. Something to do together, something that was positive, and that was baseball.
I think this is where he feels at ease. That's what his dad did, let's play baseball, and baseball is what.
We want to underscore again.
This country has been immobilized by these terrorist attacks in terms of air travel today.
The airport's being evacuated. They need to go home.
There could be terrorists hijacking aircraft and heading toward buildings that are well known, who knows, perhaps in other cities.
We're also getting reports at the Capitol, the Treasury building also being evacuated.
Later, we learned that Flight 93 was either coming into the White House or the Capitol, and I think most believe it was the Capitol. The Capitol Police started yelling, "Evacuate, evacuate." We ran out of the Capitol, and I asked the security where to go, and they said, just run, run, run. And I looked back, and all of the smoke was coming from the Pentagon.
Honey, are you there? Dad, pick up, sweetie. Okay, well, I just wanted to tell you I love you. We're having a little problem on the plane. want to tell you I love you. Please tell my children that I love them very much. And I'm so sorry, babe. I hope to be able to see your face again, baby.
On Flight 93, the passengers who were able to make phone calls to their loved ones on the ground learned what had happened on some of the other flights. And a brave group of those passengers made the decision to storm the cockpit.
And that plane went down in Somerset County, Pennsylvania, near Shanksville, killing all 40 on board.
United 93, have you got information on that yet?
Yeah, he's down.
He's down?
Yes.
When did he land? Because we have confirmation.
He did not land.
Oh, he's down?
Yeah,
Down?
somewhere up northeast of Camp David.
Northeast of Camp David.
That's the last report. They don't know exactly where.
I always have to memorialize and think about those on Flight 93 because in many ways, they took that plane down and saved many lives, including my own. On Flight 93 was Wanda Green, who was the cousin of my chief of staff, Sandre Swanson. And so this hit personally because Wanda was one of the flight attendants who took over and made sure that that plane did not come into the Capitol. It was the most personal and most tragic moment. They're heroes, they're sheroes, they're people whose legacy and whose life I honor each and every day.
So the pieces of this story continue to come together. I have to say, in my 30 years as a journalist, I've never seen anything like this, never covered a story of the dimensions of this.
Here's what we know. Just before 9 Eastern time this morning, a plane crashed into one of the twin towers of the World Trade Center. A few minutes later, a second plane crashed into the other tower. Both skyscrapers are on fire.
All right, we're in Stairway B, Tower 2, on the 4th floor. Hey, Mayday! Who's calling that?
Over the radio comes Mayday, 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 get out of the building. All of a sudden, the North Tower started to shake violently.
Suddenly a loud roar. Where we were was shaking. It sounded like rolling thunder times 20. It was just a weird, horrible, scary sound. I remember the ceiling tiles falling that were above us. Smoke started pouring in to where we were. We had no idea what was happening, but we ran as fast as we could. The smoke now was pouring in from everywhere and was just about so thick that I probably couldn't see from me to you. We didn't know it, but what was happening was the South Tower was collapsing.
Just been a huge explosion. We can see a billowing smoke rising, and I'll tell you that I can't see that second tower.
I hope I live. I hope I live. It's coming down on me. Here it comes. I'm getting behind a car.
It was the first to collapse, even though it was the second one hit.
I started to run, and all of a sudden, this huge ball of white smoke just came like locusts over me. I couldn't see, so I fell, and I just laid there
So I couldn't hear nothing, I couldn't see nothing.
And I remember people running up Liberty Street. Liberty Street turns into Maiden Lane, which is where our offices were. And they're running up Liberty Street. And this mud crowd was chasing them up the street. But it looked like it had a mouth. And the cloud just engulfed them, like it swallowed them.
Anthony, you okay?
You see this crowd coming at you, and all you're really thinking is, oh shit. I step back, and as I step back to the doorway of the office, the crowd hits the building and the whole building shakes. And you could hear glass breaking. Everybody's screaming, and it's just chaos at that point. And I realized that I don't know where my undercover team is. I hadn't heard from them since the buildings got hit. And I'm standing looking out the window and I'm saying, I don't know where they are. Somebody's got to be dead. What am I going to tell their mother, wife, daughter, child about how I allowed them to go into this situation and now they're dead? You know, these are the same people who I could have been at their barbecue last weekend.
As I laid there, it seemed like a beam of light came straight through the cloud. So I said to myself, I said, maybe I'm dead, and maybe God came to get me. And then all of a sudden, it just opened up like the Red Sea, and that's when I heard people screaming and yelling and help, help.
Yeah, Mike! Mike! Mike, come over here!
I finally cleared my face. I was dazed.
Two people who seemed to be in shock that we grabbed and made come with us. They were covered from head to toe with tan soot. Finally got to the Borders bookstore. We used the axe to get into the store and got out to Church Street. When I could see the sky, I turned around to look and did not see the South Tower. And for the first time, I started to realize what must have happened just 15 minutes or 10 minutes earlier. I knew that people were lost. I was praying that the 9 people in my care were not lost. My tower was still standing, the North Tower, with a giant multi-story hole with hot flames and smoke pouring out.
I heard the mayday to get out of the building. So I knew that inside the tower was a place of danger. I didn't know what that danger was, but I knew we had to get out, and I knew no one was answering the radio anymore. And at the 19th floor, we got stopped by a firefighter who came out of the hallway and said, I have a bunch of civilians down at the end of the hall. He says, they're not leaving. I need help getting them to leave.
All right, Tommy, listen carefully. I'm sending all the injured down to you on 40. You're going to have to get them down to the elevator. There's about 10 to 15 people coming down to you. Okay. 10 civilians coming down.
Some guys were doing some extraordinarily unselfish things and saying, I'm going to stay behind and make sure everyone starts to get out themselves. I took an oath, and I believe in my oath. My oath is to help people, even if it's going to cost me my own life. It's quite new to all of us. There was no playbook. We went into the hallway, and at this point, all the lights were now out, but the emergency lighting was working, so you had some visibility. Saw this large man on the floor. I told the officers, just grab his legs, we'll grab his arms, and we'll just drag him. And that's what we did. We dragged him down the 3 flights of stairs and got into the lobby. When we got there, some of them said the holdup, there was people jumping.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Oh.
The people who were stuck at the top, who had no choice, but to either jump or burn to death because they had no way of getting out. That bothers me. That sticks to me like you have no idea.
When we got into the courtyard, it was a complete whiteout. You could see maybe about 10 to 15 feet in front of you. I can only compare this to walking in a blizzard. And then we heard another loud noise. The roar was so loud that my first interpretation was that it was another plane coming. I ran about 2 steps, and then it went pitch black and just engulfed in thick black smoke.
Good Lord. There are no words.
I ran another 2 steps and then just got into the fetal position, and at that point, I thought there'd be a fireball behind the smoke, and resigned to the end of my life. I thought it was going to be over. I had just some quick thoughts saying goodbye to my family. I think I mouthed the words, goodbye to my wife. And then I had a prayer, and that prayer was just make this quick and make it painless.
A catastrophe on the tip of Manhattan.
And then it became find a phone, gotta find a phone. I finally found a phone that worked in an abandoned subway station at Canal Street and got a hold of my wife. I remember breaking down. And I think the same was true on the other end. And so we probably didn't say anything to each other for quite a while. It was just the way we were connected again. It was just very important.
You had all this ash falling down to the ground, and it almost seemed like snow, because that's how soft it was hitting the ground. And there were people there who were just walking around in a daze. If I had to compare them to anything that's happening now, it's like that TV show, The Walking Dead. Because I would walk up to people and ask them who they were and where they're going, and most of them couldn't tell me.
I was having a lot of difficulty breathing. All that debris had been sucked into my throat. It was like someone stuck a sock into my throat. We eventually ran into a chief from the Division of Safety who indicated that there's nothing you can do anymore. It's just the 2 towers had collapsed. This is, you made it out alive. The custom building, World Trade Center number 6, is an overhang, and I was in that overhang. So the middle of the building was crushed, but the two ends had held up, and I was under one of those ends. I know a couple of the police officers were killed that were right behind us.
The scope of this disaster is impossible to comprehend.
There was a bar where a lot of people were there, sitting in there looking at the news. So we went in there, tried to ease our way in there, and then we saw George Bush, the president, talking. And that's when they showed us the pictures of what happened at the planes at the World Trade.
Is that really the first time you knew it was the plane?
First time. Did not know, did not see, didn't know what it was.
We went to go over to the Emma E. Booker Elementary School, where the president was going to meet with some second graders and read a book with them and then give a speech about leaving no child behind in education. I'm standing at the door to the classroom where the president and the principal would go, and I'm standing with the president and the principal of the school when Deb Lauer, who was a Navy captain and the director of the White House Situation Room and the acting National Security Advisor of the trip, came up to the president and said, "Sir, it appears a small twin-engine prop plane crashed into one of the towers at the World Trade Center in New York City." The president, the principal, and I all had exactly the same reaction. "Oh, what a horrible accident. The pilot must have had a heart attack or something." After that, the principal of the school then opened the door to the classroom, and she and the president walked into the classroom. And that was only a nanosecond, because Captain Lauer then came back up to me and said, "Oh my God, another plane hit the other tower at the World Trade Center." I really did think about what I was going to say. I then opened the door to the classroom. I stepped into the classroom. As the students are reaching down under their desks to pick up their books is when I walked forward and walked up to the president. He did not see me coming. I leaned over and I whispered into his right ear, "A second plane hit the second tower. America is under attack." We arrived at Sarasota Airfield, and the doors open up, and we get out of the limousine, and I was struck by something that is a protocol no-no. The engines for Air Force One were already turned on. The protocol normally is you don't start the engines until the president is safely on the plane. This plane started rolling down the runway even before the door was shut and the president had taken his seat.
It's either a U.S. Air Force or Navy aircraft, fighter aircraft, now on patrol in what we've described as the no-fly zone.
Every plane was told they had to land. And the president received a call from Vice President Cheney asking if the president would authorize our fighter pilots to shoot down commercial jetliners if they were not complying with what was supposed to happen.
Vice President has cleared. Vice President has cleared us to intercept tracks. Our interest, shoot them down if they do not respond first on RCC.
When we learned that Flight 93 crashed in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, that was soon after the president had given the authorization. I will admit, some of us wondered, did we shoot it down? Obviously, we did not. You could hear the fog of war, not just have your vision clouded. The fog of war was in the voices. The president was very agitated with me on Air Force One because he wanted to go back to Washington, D.C. I said, "Mr. President, you don't want to make that decision right now." I would talk to the pilot, I would talk to the Secret Service agents. They were not prepared to go back to Washington, D.C. And We were fortunate to have 2 military aides on the trip. I said, I want options. I want to take the president to a safe place where we can decide what goes on next. We ended up landing in Barksdale Air Force Base. We're struck by how the fighter jets are so close to us, escorting us down to land that you could actually see the faces of the pilots in the planes.
I asked the American people to join me in saying a thanks for all the folks who have been fighting hard to rescue our fellow citizens, and to join me in saying a prayer for the victims and their families.
Now we went from Barksdale Air Force Base to Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska. And when we got to Nebraska, we went down to a deep tunnel underground to the Strategic Air Command. And all of these flat screen TVs are in the room, and you have all these admirals and generals in there, and they're talking, and you could hear all of the communication of the FAA and the military. The president was clearly disruptive to that group because the officers didn't know whether to stand or sit. We went to another room and had a secure video conference back to Washington, D.C. We heard from George Tenet, Don Rumsfeld, Dick Cheney. We were able to have a better understanding of what was happening in Washington, D.C. with regard to Andrews Air Force Base. Later, we piled on Air Force One and then flew back to Washington, D.C. And as we're leaning on the couch, looking out the window on Air Force One as we're coming into Andrews Air Force Base, you could see the smoke billowing out of the Pentagon. And the president was right beside me. He said, "That's the face of war of the 21st century."
I really felt an urgency to be at my post when the commander-in-chief returned that evening. Bush gets off the helicopter, comes over to Karen and I, and we greet him, and he doesn't say a word. He just nods and walks right by us into the Oval Office, which was being prepared for a television address to the nation that night.
Terrorist attacks can shake the foundations of our biggest buildings, but they cannot touch the foundation of America. These acts shatter steel, but they cannot dent the steel of American resolve.
He made it pretty clear that we were going to respond. This would not stand. And there was no doubt in the president's mind that that would mean military action. Alberto Gonzales, the White House counsel, had already started looking at what are all of the issues that have to be considered on going to war.
We knew it was a terrorist attack, and we knew immediately it was Al-Qaeda. In the National Security Council meetings, I would get to sit in as White House counsel in every National Security Council meeting, and there was chatter about Al-Qaeda interested in doing something spectacular. He knew immediately that this was a war. This was not going to be a law enforcement matter. We weren't just going to use the police, the FBI, to respond to this, to investigate this. We were going to use our military. We were going to use, of course, the FBI and law enforcement. We were going to pull all levers of power. We were going to exercise our economic might. We were going to take advantage of our foreign relationships across the world. That's how we were going to respond.
We all went to the Capitol steps, stood together and sang "God Bless America," and you know, people felt this sense of unity and wanted to be there. The mood in the country was fear, sorrow, grief, and anger. And it was a moment where there were so many complex emotions coming together at once. You know, a roller coaster ride in many respects. Of course, the families and communities that lost loved ones, the mourning and the grieving was great. And the fear, not knowing what was next, was very pronounced. I know at the Capitol, we weren't sure what was going on and what came next. And so that fear was there with everyone. Then the anger, not knowing who or what, but angry. Everyone was angry, myself included, about whoever did this. They deserved to come to justice. We were mourning, we were grieving, we were angry, we were in a lot of pain.
America today is on bended knee in prayer for the people whose lives were lost here. I can hear you. I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you. And the people who knocked these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
The best word to describe his mood was determination. He had a job to do. He knew why he had been elected President of the United States for this moment.
This is an enemy who preys on innocent and unsuspecting people, then runs for cover. But it won't be able to run for cover forever.
The president understood that this could not have been possible except for the fact that in Afghanistan, the Taliban had provided a safe haven for al-Qaeda to plan successfully this attack. And the president made the decision very quickly that not only would we go after those responsible for the attacks, but we would also go after those who harbored and helped plan, gave people an opportunity to carry out these attacks. We believe that in order to rid, or at least diminish the capabilities of al-Qaeda, it would be important to hurt the Taliban.
In many respects, what I was hearing was revenge. It was anger and revenge.
Revenge. I want to get even.
They know who's behind all this. They know what country is supporting all these people.
They need to clean their clock. I mean, into the Stone Age. This is ridiculous.
I think we should bomb them back. I really do.
The enemy's got to be eradicated. And you cannot talk with the enemy.
They can't push us around like this. We're the #1 nation, and let's do something about it.
We want to respond. You don't attack America like this and get away with it.
Not only those who harbor terrorists, but those who in any way, any aid or comfort whatsoever, will now face the wrath of our country.
You think this is the start of a serious war against terrorism?
I believe it is, and God willing, it will be.
Now the time for talking is over, and it's time for action to start.
As the lawyers in the White House, working with John Ashcroft, the Attorney General, and the lawyers of the Department of Justice, we would be asked by the President, is this something that I can do to protect America? Is this something that I can do in self-defense? Is this something that I can do in response to this attack? Is this something I can do to attack those, to punish those responsible for these attacks? And so we quickly looked at the President's emergency powers, both by statute and, of course, looking at his constitutional authority as Commander-in-Chief, which gives the President very expansive authority, particularly when acting in self-defense, following an attack on the nation that we experienced that day.
The President knew that he was going to have a military response. The question is, do you need to have congressional authority? This was outside of the normal structure of a war. Can you declare war on a terrorist group? Does Washington have the institutional understanding of what that means? Do we have to go to Congress to declare war against a terrorist group? The President wanted to get Congress's buy-in, and there was a debate about what does that mean, and he could have probably argued that he didn't need their buy-in, but he wanted to get their buy-in, so we were looking to craft something that Congress would have a chance to respond to, both the House and the Senate, and so that was the use of force.
The general feeling was that an authorization to use military force would signify congressional support, both politically and monetarily, and it would buttress, it would support the President's constitutional authority as Commander-in-Chief. I made a decision that I would have Tim Flanagan, my deputy, take the lead in terms of drafting the AUMF and working with aides at Congress. recognition the president has the constitutional authority to use force as commander-in-chief. So that we felt that that was important. And so it was broad enough that would allow us to go after al-Qaeda and those who assisted or harbored al-Qaeda in carrying out these attacks. So it's a pretty broad grant of authority.
Today, congressional leaders tour the wreckage at the Pentagon and vow the president will get whatever he wants. But behind closed doors, some Democrats and Republicans balk at what some see as the president's request for sweeping powers. This draft resolution from the White House authorizes use of armed forces against all those who planned, authorized, harbored, committed, or aided in the attacks, and to deter and preempt any future acts of terrorism.
A lot of members of Congress were feeling, what do we do? How do we do it? What's the appropriate response? We did receive from the administration a draft authorization to use force. And so much of the discussion after 9/11 was around that authorization. The AUMF is the authorization to use military force. In this instance, it was 60 words, and it says the president is authorized to use force. It did not name where, when, and how. It just said against any nation, organization, associated forces, or individuals connected to 9/11. If the president thinks we should go to war, bring that authorization to Congress. Let us debate it. Let us work on it. And if we decide that, yes, it's reasonable and that that's what we should do, it's in the United States national security interest to go to war, then Congress will vote for it. But the AUMF was so broad, it did not mention al-Qaeda at all. I kept speaking out in our meetings saying, no, 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 it's too broad. There were many members saying, yes, 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 but we got to do it. And I said, this is about our Constitution, and we can't give any authority away to any president. Those discussions were taking place at the same time that the memorial was being planned at the National Cathedral. I'll never forget it. It was a rainy day. I went to the cathedral, and the head of the cathedral, his name was Reverend Nathan Baxter. During his eulogy, he said, as we act, let us not become the evil we deplore. It was at that moment I was settled. I could not give any president the authority to use force that was so open-ended.
I rise today in support of this resolution. Civilized society has long sought to end the use of violence. But the perpetrators of terrorism and states that harbor them are the enemies of civilized society. They only understand the use of force, and the time has come to speak to them on their terms.
The resolution before us empowers the President to bring to bear the full force of American power abroad.
We are coming after you, and the fury of hell is coming with us.
I was the only one in the House or the Senate that voted no on the authorization to use military force as it relates to 9/11.
Nobody in the Senate.
Nobody in the Senate.
The gentlewoman from California is recognized for a minute and a half.
Mr. Speaker, members, I rise today really with a very heavy heart. One that is filled with sorrow for the families and the loved ones who were killed and injured this week. Only the most foolish and the most callous would not understand the grief that has really gripped our people and millions across the world. September 11th changed the world. Our deepest fears now haunt us. Yet I am convinced that military action will not prevent further acts of international terrorism against the United States.
By the time I got back to my office, the death threats and you do not want to know what all happened. But bottom line is there were over 60,000 emails, phone calls, letters. About 50% were literally death threats, hostile remarks, people calling me all kinds of names, a traitor, committed acts of treason, you should be hung. emotions are normal to feel. That's part of human nature. But we also have to balance that with our rational thinking. We have to make sure that we don't make irrational decisions when our emotions are so high. So many people think by saying you disagree, you're committing an act of treason and in times of national security threats. And I'm saying, wait a minute, that's when you want someone to say no. That's when you want your elected officials to rise above the anger, to have some rational thinking and response. And you cannot send these troops in harm's way forever.
The military scenarios that the president has before him are extensive. A senior military official tells ABC News they even include ground troops.
On September 14th, when I was in the Oval Office early in the morning, the president walks up to me and he said, when everybody is leaving the room, he said, Andy, I want to convene the War Council tomorrow at Camp David. The principals were there, and it included lawyers, the FBI director, the Defense Department, obviously, the State Department, the Vice President. And there was no doubt that we were getting ready to go to war. What does it mean to do that? The president said, I don't want to send $1 million cruise missile and hit a $5 tent. That's not the kind of response that we want to have. And so it was a very robust discussion about what it meant. The president was actually inviting every leader in the world. He said, this is your chance to be with us or against us. If you're not with us, you're against us.
Underneath our tears is the strong determination of America to win this war. And we will win it. Americans are asking, who attacked our country? The evidence we have gathered all points to a collection of loosely affiliated terrorist organizations known as Al-Qaeda. The leadership of Al-Qaeda has great influence in Afghanistan and supports the Taliban regime in controlling most of that country. In Afghanistan, we see Al-Qaeda's vision for the world.
Everyone had confidence we were going to be successful in this war. There was no question about that. There was just a question of how long it would take.
Afghanistan was an incredibly complex challenge for the U.S. military. It's a landlocked country halfway around the world. It's geographically very challenging. There's steep mountain ranges that ring half the country. It's bordered by countries that have a strained relationship with the United States, if they have a relationship at all. Pakistan, Iran, former Soviet republics like Tajikistan, China. And so, how do you even get the troops in?
The only defense against terrorism is offense. You have to simply take the battle to them. How do you do that? You don't do it with conventional capabilities. You do it with unconventional capabilities. And there are clearly forces on the ground that are anxious to rid the country of Al-Qaeda and to rid the country of Taliban.
What eventually starts to take hold at the Pentagon, the CIA, is a plan to try to make use of Afghan resistance fighters, called the Northern Alliance. The leader of that whole movement was a brave fighter against the Soviet occupation named Ahmad Shah Massoud. Massoud was lionized by his followers, but with good reason. He was a fearsome commander on the battlefield. He was able to keep the Taliban at bay from many parts of northern Afghanistan.
میتونی اگر درباره از اینکه بودن در کنار برادرتان.
خب من در وجود از این احساس میکردم که واقعا قهرمان است و همین روحیه بسیار.
Good luck, have fun, and beat him, probably.
You're trying my patience. Not recommended. I am the swarm.
Finished learning.
You're trying. I am the swarm.
Not enough energy. You're going to need a tad bit more energy. Not enough energy.
I am the swarm.
You're going to need a tad bit more energy. Not enough energy.
You're trying my patience. Not recommended. I am the swarm.
Your upgrade is research complete. You're going to need a tad bit more energy.
As all are one. I am the swarm.
Minerals, now! Get them! Not enough minerals. Yeah, you need to put that on the purple stuff. Finished learning.
As all are one.
Not enough minerals. Minerals, now! Get them! Not enough minerals. Research complete.
We agree.
Minerals, now! Get them! Not enough minerals. Minerals, now! Get them! Not enough minerals. Finished learning. mean, no. You can't... Minerals, now! Get them! Research complete. Finished learning.
We agree.
Not enough minerals. Unacceptable warp location. Minerals, now! Get them! Not enough minerals. Research complete. Minerals, now! Get them! Not enough minerals. Minerals, now! Get them! Not enough minerals. Minerals, now! Get them!
Downloading order.
Unacceptable warp location. I mean, no. You can't warp there.
We proceed.
Not enough minerals. Upgrade complete. Upgrade complete. minerals. Minerals, now! Get them! Upgrade complete. You made another queen. Nice. A new queen has emerged. Minerals, now! You made another queen. Nice. Your upgrade is done. A new queen has emerged. You made another queen. Nice. Not enough minerals. Minerals, now! Get them! Not enough minerals. A new queen has emerged. You made another queen. Nice. Finished learning. We must place that on creep. Upgrade complete.
You're trying my patience.
And we were able to run into a building, and we were in the lobby of a building getting briefed by one of our supervisors. Our squad sort of got the ticket for this case, and we're trying to coordinate the leads coming in. But of course, every person in the New York office, every person in the FBI in those first days and weeks were working on the case. We wanted to find out what happened that day, who had committed those attacks, who was behind it, but even more important, we wanted to make sure that there wasn't a second wave, that it wasn't going to happen again. So we were following up on every single lead.
just want to get out of DC.
Flight 77 hit the Pentagon. I was assigned to the Flight 77 team to investigate, the 5 hijackers on that flight and everything about them. Flight 77 took off from Dulles Airport in Northern Virginia. And like all of the other flights that day, it was headed to the West Coast. And on each flight, there were pilot hijackers. On Flight 77, that was Hani Hanjour. There were also what we called non-pilot hijackers or muscle hijackers. And they were the ones who were responsible to really use force and power to subdue the passengers, to allow the pilot hijackers to get access to the cockpit and assume control of the plane. And on Flight 77, those muscle hijackers, the non-pilots, were Khalid al-Midhar, Salem al-Hazmi, Nawaf al-Hazmi, they were brothers, and Majed Moked. The team spent a lot of time piecing together a near-daily timeline of the hijackers' activities. We tried to track nearly every step along the way. Khalid al-Midhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi had gone to training camp, an al-Qaeda training camp in Afghanistan, and were selected by bin Laden to participate in what was known then among al-Qaeda as the Plains Operation. And they did not have any experience living in the United States. They had never been to the United States. They didn't have really English language skills. But in late 1999, at the direction of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who was the architect of the 9/11 attacks, they started their journey towards the United States. And transited to Kuala Lumpur.
The CIA is increasingly concerned about the al-Qaeda threat and learns about a meeting in Malaysia in Kuala Lumpur in January of 2000. Al-Midhar and al-Hazmi, the hijackers, attend this meeting, which is part of one of the last meetings that they've been having, a number of them, and training through the course of the year before they leave for the United States. The CIA even learns that they have U.S. visas.
Khalid al-Midhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi end up being the first hijackers who enter the United States.
The CIA was tracking these followers of bin Laden as bin Laden declared war on the United States on multiple occasions. This meeting in Malaysia was a key jumping off point where the actual people who would be charged with carrying out this attack both received the green light and also had put in place the various mechanisms or the various arms of the plot that they believed were essential to its success, where they concluded how they could best arrive in the United States on visas as students attending flight academies. Information that those individuals shortly afterwards arrive in the United States is not effectively communicated to the FBI in a timely fashion.
The way the system worked back then, the CIA obviously does intelligence work overseas, and the FBI does counterterrorism work in the U.S. And so, strangely, the information does not necessarily flow. There was even a memo drafted at some point to communicate from the CIA to the FBI about them, and that ends up not happening.
They don't send the memo.
It ends up not getting sent. If the U.S. government functioned at the time in the way you would think, and the FBI systems and the CIA systems were integrated, it would have popped up that these were al-Qaeda people who had been followed to meetings in Malaysia and had come to the U.S. and, could be in the U.S., up to no good. But that did not happen.
I'm not sure that had something been shared that everybody would have connected all the dots. There was this gap, this lapse, this lack of sharing that some people can point to and say, had we known, we could have put a stop to it. Okay, maybe.
was a missed opportunity. Had the CIA provided that information to the FBI in a timely manner, we could have started tracking these two individuals.
We talk about every lead being run down, every investigative step exhausted in terrorism investigations. That would have been done on any piece of information, especially knowing that al-Qaeda operatives had arrived in the United States.
I believe it was on September 12th, actually, a Toyota Corolla, was recovered at Dulles Airport. The car was registered to Nawaf al-Hazmi, and it had an address in San Diego. The FBI followed up on that address in San Diego.
What we know is they arrive in Los Angeles on January 15th. On February 1st, they pop up at a restaurant in Los Angeles where they meet this Saudi named Omar al-Bayoumi. Omar al-Bayoumi is a mysterious and strange character. He's a graduate student who doesn't appear to go to classes. He is getting paid by the Saudi government through a contractor, but doesn't really appear to work. He doesn't appear to need money. Even many people who didn't think he was involved in the attacks thought that he was some kind of spy for the Saudi intelligence service. Not a full-fledged intelligence officer, but some kind of informant or monitor.
He encounters the hijackers, tells them that he lives in San Diego. If they ever find themselves there, that they should, look him up. And they do just that. And he helps them get settled in. He helps them open a bank account. He helps them get an apartment in the same complex where he resides with his family.
He says it's all because, out of Islamic hospitality, he was looking to help them out. But the great suspicion was that this was not an accidental meeting, that this had to be something that was arranged. They also spent time with another key figure who was Anwar al-Awlaki, who was a Yemeni imam who was based in San Diego at the time and went on to be, some years later, an important leader of al-Qaeda. Al-Hazmi and Al-Midhar, they end up moving to a boarding house in the summer of 2000, which is run, ironically enough, by an FBI informant. The FBI informant is an older gentleman, a widower living alone in a house. He had a series of young Muslim visitors who stayed with him as boarders.
They weren't suspicious. They wouldn't have done anything that would have caused anyone to reach out to law enforcement or to the authorities. During the time in San Diego, Nawaf al-Hazmi seemed to live a pretty normal life. He worked at a gas station for a couple of weeks. He played soccer with his friends.
They attempted to take flying lessons while they were in San Diego, and their English was really not good enough to take the flight instruction.
Because of their language ability, neither of them was able to do very well in flight training, and they became muscle hijackers instead.
Zacarias Moussaoui is a Frenchman who had spent time in the UK and had trained in Afghanistan. He also goes to flight school in the US. He's a very volatile, talkative guy and acted kind of crazy, and it drew all kinds of suspicion. Among other things, it was said that he had said at some point that he really wasn't interested in learning how to land, just in sort of how to fly, and wanted to go to the big planes right away.
He also had purchased flight deck videos, and these videos were the same exact videos from the same vendor that some of the hijackers had purchased. Immigration Service picked him up and took him into custody. And it was believed that he could have been a hijacker on 9/11 if he had not been arrested by INS in August of that year.
It's another missed opportunity because there was information connecting him to Ramzi bin al-Shibh, who was one of the coordinators of the 9/11 plot, a guy back in Germany. If the FBI would have gotten access to his computer, he could have been a doorway into possibly detecting the plot ahead of time.
Mohammed Atta, sort of the operational commander, met with Ramzi bin al-Shibh and with other logistical support elements coming from al-Qaeda to actually confirm that everything was in place. 19 of the hijackers, there were 15 muscle and 4 pilots. They had been very carefully selected. They were people that Al-Qaeda had enormous confidence in, that would not waver from what seemed like an impossible operation to strike at the heart of the United States. This entailed at least 3 years of detailed plannings, meetings throughout the world, hand-picked selection of 19 hijackers and pilots, orchestration of their movements.
In the days prior to September 11th, we see the hijacking teams start to relocate to be closer to their departure cities. So we see the Flight 77 hijackers relocate from New Jersey down to Maryland to be closer to Dulles Airport. We see the Flight 93 team move closer to Newark Airport, where Flight 93 departed from. And we see the Flight 11 and Flight 175 hijackers move to the Boston area. On the morning of 9/11, all of the hijacker teams arrive at the airport. They go through security at their respective airports. We believe that they're carrying short-bladed knives, which were allowed on board flights. So they got through security with no issue, and they boarded their flights.
In the 80s and 90s, there was no political will. People get blown up by individuals. Planes are hijacked. It's all overseas. Small amount of casualties. They're nasty, they're bloody. It's a nuisance, but it's not a national security issue. For 9/11, John Ashcroft, he said, here are our priorities. This is what we're going to focus on. And the priorities were guns, drugs, civil rights, prisoner protection. So then you figure, well, we're going to get attacked. Where's the terrorism? And the terrorism slipped. I've forgotten what number it was. I think it was like 15. And I couldn't believe it. I could not believe this.
The whole national security team is at Camp David talking about the failures. We'd had people living in this country planning this attack for some period of time. Our intelligence had to be better. We needed to be better at getting information. How do we do that? We talked about when we capture someone, is there a way we can question them to get better information, the most reliable information?
Would be inappropriate for me to talk about operational matters, specific options or the kinds of activities we might undertake going forward. We do indeed, though, have, obviously, the world's finest military. They've got a broad range of capabilities, and they may well be given missions in connection with this overall task and strategy. We also have to work sort of the dark side, if you will. We've got to spend time in the shadows in the intelligence world. A lot of what needs to be done here will have to be done quietly, without any discussion, using sources and methods that are available to our intelligence agencies if we're going to be successful.
Going back to the Ford White House when Cheney was chief of staff, at least that far back, Dick Cheney developed a very robust view about the president's powers under the Constitution, especially as those powers related to national security and war. And his basic view is that when it comes to war and national security, the president is in charge, and he can do what he thinks is necessary, and Congress basically can't get in the way, and if Congress does get in the way, the president can ignore it. That was his legal view. It was an absolutist view of the president's powers in wartime.
So it's going to be vital for us to use any means at our disposal basically, to achieve our objective.
That was frightening to me. It was frightening to hear the Vice President of the United States publicly on a television show where he should have been calming the nation down, where he should have been depressurizing. He was upping the pressure, upping the ante. And so I feared that we would do things that would be to our detriment. What I know is that when emotions are high, rationality is low, and poor decisions are being made.
cannot deal with terror, will not end in a treaty. There will be no peaceful coexistence, no negotiations, no summit, no joint communique with the terrorist.
No, I'm not a member of Al-Qaeda, I'm a student.
The detainees are behaving appropriately. We're only using the force that's necessary. We're treating with dignity and respect.
In 2001, a lot of prisoners started getting captured in Afghanistan.
English. I am report, TV report, from Al Jazeera report. Listen to me. Talk to the commandant. I am from Al Jazeera report. I come from Kandahar to here, and I have camera, and I lose it in Kunduz. I am not a mujahid. See?
The U.S. was offering large rewards of money, bounties for people, to the Pakistanis and to the Afghans to basically turn over people who fit a certain profile.
We dropped leaflets over Afghanistan saying, riches will be upon you if you turn in these people. Enough money to feed your village, your family, your tribe for a year, should you identify people. And so we got people. We got hundreds and hundreds of people.
Once you started capturing people, you have limited options and you can't kill them. You don't want to release them because they're going to come back and fight against you again. So we had to make some decisions about, well, what are we going to do with people that we capture? General Tommy Franks was of the view that we ought to have a limited footprint as much as possible in Afghanistan to reassure the Afghan people that we weren't going to be there long term. The notion of establishing a large footprint with prisons or one large prison just didn't make sense. So we discarded that idea. We had discussions with other home countries. They weren't interested in receiving back these terrorists, so that was out. Then we turned towards the United States. We actually had some discussions, very limited, but we looked at Leavenworth, Alcatraz. We
as a place
very limited. Someone may have thrown it out as an idea. Looked at, of course, Supermax in Florence, Colorado. But we felt that in the end, it was, again, just weeks after 9/11, politically, we didn't know whether the American people would understand that. We also had concerns about the rights that would attach to anyone we brought into the United States.
Some people in the military called me up and said, we're going to be getting into the prison business. Would you like to come along? We really didn't know what was going to happen and what it was going to be. The Pentagon decided they were going to set up a detention center in Guantanamo.
Guantanamo is part of Cuban territory. It's the southeast corner of Cuba. The treaty ending the Spanish-American War in 1898 gave Cuba independence, but the part of the deal was we got to keep Guantanamo. The legal formality of it was under a perpetual lease. So we technically leased the land in Guantanamo, but only we can cancel the lease. The State Department said they were told to look for the legal equivalent of outer space. And that's what Guantanamo was meant to be, a place where no law applied.
It was this legal no man's land, this devil's island.
We flew into Guantanamo for what was going to be like a 1 or 2 day show tour. And while we were there, they put some prisoners in the air. And what happened was some very gritty video came out of detainees, maybe those detainees, being put on a flight. And they were chained up and hooded and shackled to each other and being sort of marched along, and it looked anything but humane. In the hangar, somebody asked, who are they sending? And he said, they're sending us the worst of the worst. And they were talking about those first 20 men.
These are not nice people. Several have publicly stated here their intent to kill an American before they leave Guantanamo Bay. We will not give them that satisfaction.
There was a lot of people who thought that they were going to be bringing these Hannibal Lecter types off of these planes who, you know, were like suicidal, fanatical terrorists.
These are people that would gnaw through hydraulic lines in the back of a C-17 to bring it down.
They were strapped essentially to the floor, required to sit upright, put hooded, and subjected to various sensory deprivation techniques like goggles, earmuffs, oven mitts, and then shackled in multiple places. And then they were just flown essentially like cargo to Guantanamo.
The world would go on to see those 20 men 10 days later, approximately, when the Pentagon released combat camera images of those 20 men inside a cell. That's them. That's the day one.
They're kneeling down, yeah.
They're on their knees. You can find 20 human beings in that picture. You can find all 20. The Pentagon released that photo for a variety of reasons, and Europe was repulsed by it and thought it said torture.
When the first plane load arrived and more plane loads arrived, we realized it wasn't the worst of the worst. This wasn't the Al-Qaeda suspects that we had been tracking. This was what I referred to as dirt farmers. They were not battlefield captures. These were bounty babies.
From the beginning of Guantanamo, the word that came down from the Pentagon, no matter what you do not call them prisoners. Because if they're called prisoners, then we're going to have to treat them under the Geneva Conventions that protects prisoners of war. So that's why we have detainees and not prisoners.
You were sent here because you are suspected of being high-ranking Taliban or members of Al-Qaeda. Some of you have said you are innocent and that you are not Taliban or Al-Qaeda. To you, I would say that America is a nation of laws. Your case will be heard and you will be judged fairly. We are being guided by the Genevan Conventions. What does that mean? What that means is the guidance that we're receiving from Washington, D.C., we're following. And I think that you'll find that we're treating them in a humane fashion.
In a leaked memo you wrote, you used the word quaint to talk about some of the provisions in the Geneva Convention. Why'd you write that? What'd you mean by that?
I used the word quaint to reflect the fact that the Geneva Convention was drafted at a time when wars were between nations and not between non-nation states like terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda. We made a determination, the lawyers, primarily based upon a memo from the Attorney General John Ashcroft, that it should not apply because Al-Qaeda was not a nation state that had signed the Geneva Conventions, and that the Taliban had forfeited their rights for prisoner of war protection because in order to receive those protections, you have to wear a uniform when fighting, you have to carry arms openly, you have to fight under a hierarchical structure, and you can't go around killing civilians indiscriminately and expect to receive the benefits of being a prisoner of war under the Geneva Conventions.
The Bush administration's decision back in 2002 that detainees in the war on terrorism have no rights under international law, they're essentially non-persons under international law, is not correct. In fact, they are protected by the Geneva Conventions, a specific part of the Geneva Conventions called Common Article 3. They're being denied basic human rights, access to lawyers, access to habeas corpus.
The detainees were exposed to the heat, the sun, the wind, the bugs.
There were 2 buckets. One bucket was for your drinking water, one was for your excrement. They had a hard top and fenced around on 3 sides with a gate to get in and out. It was the equivalent of a military dog kennel.
There was a simultaneous effort that was primarily driven out of the White House and the Vice President's office specifically to essentially embrace torture. I don't think that's an overstatement or an oversimplification of what was going on. Starting in 2002, the first high-value detainees were captured, a guy named Abu Zubaydah, who ran essentially a guest house that was often a way station for people who were going to try and join Al-Qaeda, join the Taliban in Afghanistan. And so he obviously had incredible intelligence value for that reason. He knew a lot of people who were coming and going. And the FBI starts questioning him and gets a lot of intelligence out of him. And the FBI agent, Ali Soufan, is actually like tending to his wounds and really developing rapport-based methods of interrogation, where you get to know the person begins to trust you, at least to the extent you can.
When we start arresting these people and talking to them, it's not a rocket science to interrogate them. There are so many different ways to interrogate individuals. And, you know, in the US government, we're trained to do something like this. We're trained to obtain intelligence information from human sources. And law enforcement in the United States, they do it every time. The CIA, the military, the FBI. We were involved in interrogations in the East Africa Embassy bombings, in the USS Cole bombings, and a lot of the different plots that took place around the world and the disruption.
Soufan actually has a lot of success, including identifying for the first time who Khalid Sheikh Mohammed is. It's easy to forget now because he's so widely publicized as a mastermind of September 11th, but even as late as the spring of 2002, we don't know who organized September 11th. And so the first person to give that information up was Abu Zubaydah. The FBI's success is noticed in getting intelligence out of him, and so they take Abu Zubaydah and begin subjecting him to what were then called enhanced interrogation techniques. This simultaneous effort that had been really started within the first few months after September 11th to create a torture program seized the opportunity for their first guinea pig.
When we knew we could get Abu Zubaydah, that was a very big deal for us. When we thought we could get Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, that was a very big deal for us. I mean, you know, so these high-valued targets were very important.
A decision was made by the National Security Council to look at enhanced interrogation techniques. George Tenet and the CIA were charged with, all right, what do you recommend? And so it was important to get clear guidance about, all right, where is the box? And so the Department of Justice drafted legal opinions to give guidance to the CIA.
I was in the meeting when the president was given a briefing on it, but he ended up authorizing enhanced interrogation techniques to be used under appropriate supervision, with the expectation that we would be able to prevent the next attack in the United States.
Those enhanced interrogation techniques are things like forced 24-hour-a-day nudity, 24-hour-a-day light, 24-hour-a-day cold, 24-hour-a-day darkness. Waterboarding is probably one of the most infamous or publicly known methods that were used.
I'm not in any way suggesting that they're not unpleasant or terrible, but like walling. Walling was a technique where you put a hood around their neck to make sure they don't suffer any neck injuries. You hold them against a wall that's not secure, it will collapse, and you push them against that wall. With respect to the facial slap, the palm had to be open. You could only hold the hand so many inches away from the face, and it can only strike the face on the cheek. The abdominal slap, again, open palm. You can only be so many inches from the belly. You can only strike between, I think, the navel and the nipples. So very, very detailed instructions about what could be done. We went back and looked at the Convention Against Torture, which was the genesis of the anti-torture statute. The head of the criminal division of the Department of Justice at the time wrote that torture is that activity which the very mention sends shiver up one's spine, such as needles under the fingernails, such as piercing of your eyeball, such as electric shocks to your genitals. We weren't anywhere close to that.
I spent 25 and a half years in the FBI. At the time of 9/11, I was the first assistant director in charge of counterterrorism. Director Mueller, after a briefing at the White House that he was there, he called me down to his office and said, we need to send 2 agents to this country. And I said, okay, right, we'll get right on that. What is it? And he said, well, they picked up Zubaydah. And I said, that's great. I knew we wanted him to come back here. We'll interview him. That's super. We need more than 2 agents. We'll put together the package. No, send 2 agents. I said, we're bringing him back, right? He said, no, the agencies want to keep him. And I said, that's interesting. We have no business assisting the agency around trying that somebody's not going to be rendered back here. I said, I understand what they can do and probably will do. We don't need any part of that. And he says, yes, we do. We need to be there to help them. And I said, they can't be in the room with us. And he says, no, I told the president we'd help. And I said, you really need to call the president and tell him we're not going to do this. Because think about this, our image in the American public, we're not a bunch of thugs. And we can destroy our reputation by doing something like that.
They didn't believe that these guys will talk. So they wanted to develop a program that is going to be like a cookie cutter approach. 1, 2, 3, 4, and the guy's going to give you everything. That's not how the world works. That's not how human nature works.
It was kind of a politics of fear had set in. To see that fear that I certainly had, and everyone have, just become a poison in the society, that you would just abandon the things that make the United States unique.
The CIA Inspector General in 2004 came with a conclusion that they cannot prove one imminent threat was disrupted because of enhanced interrogation techniques.
There's no evidence that...
There's no evidence, and this is the CIA themselves saying that, not me. This is the huge thing about torture. Torture gives you compliance. It does not give you cooperation. The difference between compliance and cooperation is with compliance, the person will tell you whatever you want to hear for the torture to stop. He won't tell you the truth. In cooperation, you get the truth.
It produced little useful intelligence to help us track down the perpetrators of 9/11 or prevent new attacks and atrocities.
Anyone who suggests that the enhanced techniques, let's be blunt, waterboarding, did not produce an enormous amount of valuable intelligence just isn't facing the truth.
I'm deeply concerned about who we are as a country and what we stand for and believe in. America has always been an example and an inspiration to other countries throughout the world. And if we practice torture and do things that diminish and even harm the image of the United States and motivate our enemies, then it could have profound consequences in the future. And think of what would happen if in another conflict, an enemy, not a terrorist organization, takes Americans prisoners, then obviously they will feel that they could do the same thing that we have practiced.
It took me a long time to understand. Guantanamo Bay, and the prison there particularly, was the first no-exit strategy military enterprise since the Vietnam War.
Hundreds of Taliban and al-Qaeda suspects are already in U.S. custody, including 30 more from Afghanistan, delivered today to the U.S. naval base at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. That brings the total there now to 110, with many more to come.
Nobody would know how this story would end.
How did they sneak up on us like this?
It definitely is a failure of U.S. intelligence.
Today, just the sight of a jetliner overhead, the sound of a siren, even the morning mail brings suspicion.
For New York, it was another day on the front line of fear, in the trenches of terrorist hysteria. In Rockefeller Center, an anthrax case at NBC.
You just feel so vulnerable now because you don't know what's going to happen, where it's going to happen.
That weekend after 9/11 at Camp David, it was about informing the president where we lacked authorities, where we lacked capabilities, and what was necessary to prevent this from happening again to punish those responsible for what happened on 9/11. And it set in motion certain things like the Patriot Act.
The Patriot Act is one piece of a massive surveillance effort that starts to grow in the 9/11 aftermath.
These acts of violence against innocents violate the fundamental tenets of the Islamic faith. And it's important for my fellow Americans to understand that. America counts millions of Muslims amongst our citizens. And Muslims make an incredibly valuable contribution to our country. Muslims are doctors, lawyers, law professors, members of the military, entrepreneurs, shopkeepers, moms and dads, and they need to be treated with respect.
Even as President Bush was saying, we don't blame an entire religion for the acts of a few, the government started doing exactly that.
President Bush signed the so-called Patriot Act into law on Friday in the East Room of the White House.
Following 9/11, we started to see and hear conversations about how our country's intelligence had failed. Agencies weren't talking to each other. How did all of these hijackers get in, get trained, get on planes, and nobody noticed?
As of today, we're changing the laws governing information sharing. And as importantly, we're changing the culture of our various agencies that fight terrorism.
And so what starts to happen really fast and really frighteningly is we're increasing our investments in law enforcement. We're increasing our investments in surveillance. The library provision, so you could access our library records, see everything we're reading. And another provision is the sneak and peek warrants. The Patriot Act permitted law enforcement to go into our homes and leave without telling us. So come in, look around quietly, leave behind whatever I want, take whatever I want, and there's no documentation I can access.
Federal agents swept through Islamic homes and businesses in suburban Washington looking for ties to terrorist organizations.
It's beyond personally offensive as a Muslim. It's offensive as an American. It goes against the very core of what we understood as the privacy rights that were enshrined in the Bill of Rights.
The National Security Agency is part of the Pentagon, part of the Defense Department, and it is the agency in charge of electronic surveillance of all kinds of foreign adversaries of the United States. It was created in 1952 by President Truman in an executive order, and it was an outgrowth of the war.
Not enough minerals. Minerals now! Research complete. acceptable build location. Your upgrade is done. And they're out of here.
Time code breaking that the U.S. had conducted during World War II. And it has grown over the decades into a massive modern cybersecurity, cyber offensive, code breaking, electronic eavesdropping organization of unprecedented scale. It's the largest such agency in the world.
There's before 9/11 and there's after 9/11. I was part of an agency that was supposed to keep people out of harm's way. And my first day on the job, and every time I say this, I get goosebumps. I'm feeling them right now because that day is literally frozen. 9/11 was actually my first day reporting to my new duty station. And I can play back that day second by second, minute by minute, hour by hour. But what I didn't know in that morning is the secret decisions that were made at the highest levels of the government and what the government was willing to do under the blanket of national security. What they were willing to do in going way outside the law.
Jack Goldsmith, Assistant Attorney General, Office of Legal Counsel. I went to the White House to be read into what was basically the Stellar Wind program. I went to David Addington's office. He was the person who read me in. Now, this was unusual that the Vice President's counsel was reading me into a highly classified intelligence program. Addington actually had the original authorities for the program in his safe in his office, and he said, "Prepare for your mind to be blown." because he basically said, you're going to learn about something you're not going to believe.
Immediately, I mean, within days and weeks, verbal authorization was being granted for a program called Stellar Wind, in which they're turning the extraordinary power of NSA and pointing it not just foreign, but also domestic.
What was Stellar Wind?
I mean, I have to be careful here. Parts of it are still classified. I'll just call it a warrantless wiretapping program that involved large metadata collection and also collection of content, much of it happening in the homeland.
Imagine you have a computer that's tracking every time a call is made, when it's received, where it was made, where it was received, and how long it lasted. That is metadata.
The Stellar Wind program had 3 baskets, if I could describe it that way. The first basket is the collection of the contents of telephone communications where a senior operative at the CIA believes one person on that call is a member of Al-Qaeda or some way affiliated with Al-Qaeda. The other 2 baskets did not have to do with content collection. It had to do with metadata. The second basket being telephone metadata. You don't see on there the contents of the call, but you see the number you called and perhaps the length of the call. Basket 3 is a collection of email metadata. It's who you sent the email to and from.
The basic idea was that through massive collection of this metadata, even of people who weren't suspected, that you could have a network that would allow you to put the pieces together with little pieces of evidence that you have about terrorists. You would have a pool of information that it was hoped would prevent the next 9/11. That was always the theory.
It's the digital age. We're drowning in data. So the NSA said, why don't we just take as much as we can? Wow, look how easy it is. We'll just take it all. The government entered into these extended special arrangements, which were super secret, with certain companies like the Verizons of the world, like AT&T and others for data. So they're just sweeping it all in, claiming, well, hey, until we look at it, we're not in violation. This is turning the Fourth Amendment inside out and upside down.
In the Bill of Rights, the Fourth Amendment grants us the right to privacy in our own homes, the ability to avoid having government agents barge into our homes without any approvals or without any authorization and take whatever they want from us. And this was the electronic version of an unauthorized government raid on your house.
Director Mueller came back from a briefing one morning. He called me and he said, Dell, there's a special program going on. I want you to, no one knows about it. Probably there's only 4 or 5 or 6 of us in the U.S. government. I said, yeah, what's that about? And he said, I can't tell you. Go. So I went over to the Pentagon the next morning and secure space over there and had a meeting, was briefed in on it. And so I went back and told the director, I said, I'm not sure this is going to work. And I didn't feel comfortable about it. I said, this is not going to last. He said, well, you're not authorized to tell anybody. I saw the product of it. I saw the results of it. I'm here to tell you, I saw nothing productive that came of that.
My office, I didn't realize this at the time, but it was charged with approving its legality every 6 or 7 weeks. The main problem with the program was it seemed to fly in the face of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. And it's a very complicated statute, but basically on its face, it didn't seem to allow what was going on. Rather than go to Congress and get those laws changed, the Bush administration blew through some of them and interpreted some of them in a way that they just were able to sidestep them.
In March of 2004, Jack Goldsmith, who was the new head of OLC, expressed concerns about aspects of Stellar Wind. He says, I cannot find legal support for this aspect of Stellar Wind, and we may have to discontinue this. And so—
Discontinue the program.
Discontinue something.
I basically had decided that approximately half of it could continue and approximately half of it I thought couldn't continue, that I couldn't find any legal justification for. When I informed the White House that I couldn't approve a large chunk of the surveillance program, that's when David Addington got the angriest at me he ever got and said, if you rule that way, you'll have the blood of the 100,000 people who die in the next attack on your hands. I think that he thought, A, I was wrong, and B, that's what would happen. And by the way, he didn't have to tell me that. I had the same feeling. And it weighed on me a lot, obviously.
I remember calling Andy Card. Andy came back from vacation early. We met with the vice president. I think George Tenet and Michael Hayden were there. And we talked about this. This was a very important, very significant program. Probably one of the most important and most effective programs that our government had in collecting information. And so the notion that we would discontinue something, that was serious.
Attorney General Ashcroft approved my decision, which was an amazing thing since Ashcroft had been approving the broader program on advice of the Office of Legal Counsel. It was a brave thing for him to do, frankly, because it was a back down for him, and he wasn't happy about it, but he went along with it and he was persuaded. Within hours after Ashcroft signed off and said he agreed with it, he went into the hospital with acute pancreatitis. And he had to have his gallbladder removed, he had to have surgery, and he was very sick, and it wasn't clear if he was going to survive.
We were running up against, I think March 11th was the time that the existing authorization was going to expire. And anytime there's a hole in the collection, you don't know what you might miss. And so I talked to the president. He was concerned about it because we were starting to hear chatter that perhaps something big is about to happen. And if we don't have the Department of Justice signature on that authorization, the telecom carriers are probably not going to cooperate with us. We should call John Ashcroft.
You're going to go to the hospital yourself.
We're going to go to the hospital.
The president asked me and Alberto to go to the hospital and tell him what was going on and bring a document that he had signed before and wondered if he'd be willing to sign it.
I sped to the hospital, ran up the steps, and I walked into the hospital room. Ashcroft was in intensive care. He had all these tubes in him. His eyes were almost closed, and he was very gray. And he didn't look well at all. I wasn't in there 5 or 10 minutes before Alberto Gonzalez and Andrew Card, the White House Chief of Staff, walk in. And they had the Stellar Wind approval, and they were basically asking Ashcroft to sign off on it.
Andy and I went up to John Ashcroft's room, and John was laying in the bed. Now, clearly, he looked weak, and he was pale looking.
It wasn't even obvious to me that he understood what we were talking about.
He's not coherent at this point.
He didn't say much, and he looked terrible, and I just wasn't sure what was going to happen. So they come in and make this request, and the most extraordinary thing happened. Ashcroft, to my surprise, kind of lifted himself up just a little bit off the back of the bed, and he said, I agree with the decision that was made by the Justice Department. He made it clear he didn't appreciate them coming to his intensive care room and bothering him, and then he collapsed back into his bed. And I was sure he was going to expire right then. The considered view of the Justice Department was that this program had not been operating lawfully. And this was an effort by the White House to get him to change his mind.
We just thanked him and we left. When we get back into the Suburban, we tell Addington, it didn't go well. We don't have the signature.
President Bush reapproves the entire program. He defies our advice, which is his prerogative to do. He's the President of the United States. The whole executive branch was about to melt down. There was going to be massive resignations in the Justice Department. The program would have come out then. Everything would have been worse for the White House and the president, including on the national security front. And I think that's why they backed down. Nothing like that, as best I can tell, has ever happened in American history on so many levels. And I basically was just immensely furious with the excessive secrecy and control of the White House. I felt like they really didn't want us to do a thorough and real vetting of the program. They had gotten the answer they wanted early on, and they didn't really want it vetted after that. I didn't feel like the White House was candid with me.
I started blowing the whistle internally through multiple channels. I confronted the lead attorney who had the access to the program. I reported it to the Inspector General of NSA. In February 2006, I went to the press with unclassified information regarding the mass domestic surveillance regime. They decided to make life very difficult for me. But we all have moral agency. We all have the ability to make our choices. We can choose in how we respond to things that do happen. You know, I witnessed a history. It was an extraordinary period, and I came out of the dark. I wasn't gonna just sit by and watch it all happen. I would have regretted it for the rest of my life.
The Stellar Wind program was controversial, but the law didn't change, and in fact, Congress ended up renewing the surveillance law, and in some respects, expanding surveillance powers. The Obama administration changes some policies and stuff, but the essential law didn't change. Basically, the massive surveillance powers of the government have continued and have been reapproved largely even after the revelations. It's quite clear that they acted super aggressively after 9/11 and that they were really fearful. They felt blind about what the enemy was up to, and they, in a panic, did everything they could to collect information. And they did so in ways that pretty clearly broke laws. Any power without constraint always leads to abuse.
9/11 certainly just made people want to not be soft. And probably more, prosaically, they just wanted to beat the shit out of people. It was anger, right? Like, wouldn't you want to beat the shit out of someone who, murdered 3,000 people? Who wasn't angry? But that's why we elect leaders, to be the cooler heads, to have the longer vision, to protect the values that we claim to treat as the organizing principle of our society, to actually protect those things so that the world we're living in after the current crisis passes is not so radically different than the one that we came from.
All right. Give that hugs. Got it.
Thousands more in America's military heading now to distant points.
10 days after I graduated high school, I got into the Marine Corps. What have I gotten myself into would not become clear until my first day in combat.
Today, U.S. soldiers raised the American flag over Kandahar, and it was not just any flag. This flag was flown over Ground Zero in New York City and was signed by relatives of some of the victims of the World Trade Center attacks.
Meanwhile, on the streets of the southern Afghan city, life appears to be returning to normal following the fall of the hardline Islamic regime.
After Kandahar is liberated, it's clear to the remnants of the Taliban leadership that's still in Afghanistan, as well as the fragments of al-Qaeda's leadership that's still there, that it's game over for them in Afghanistan.
خب تنهایی اگر طالبا با مو خواست امریکایی ها بن لادن تحویل میدادن و به اصطلاح مرکز القاعده در داخل افغانستان و اونها متلاشی می ساختن و اجازه نمیدادن طبعا شاید امریکایی هم داخل افغانستان نیامدیم.
شکستشان حتمی. به طالبا گفتیم که شما نمیتونید در شهرها در برابر تهاجم مقاومت کنید. مجبور میشین به ترک شهرها. در استراتژیتان باید تجدید نظر کنید. مراکز نظامیتان قادر به دفاع از خود نیست. با آسانی سرکوب میشه.
Most people assumed the war was over at that point.
Unfortunately, taking down Al-Qaeda and taking down the Taliban regime and taking down Afghanistan and destroying the terrorist cells around the world was just a step for some people in Washington to go to another war, and it's in Iraq. We start pulling resources away from that legitimate battle that we had, the battle to retaliate against 9/11, to go to a country that had nothing to do with 9/11.
On my orders, coalition forces have begun striking selected targets of military importance to undermine Saddam Hussein's ability to wage war.
In Afghanistan, the end of 2001 was a period of optimism and a period of potential where Afghanistan, coming out of the dark years from roughly 1996 until 2001, and it's as though the screens were open, the sunlight came in, and Afghan people saw an opportunity.
For the first time, the sound of music banned during the Taliban regime was blaring again on the streets. Long lines as men waited to shave their beards, mandatory under Taliban rule.
امید نو پیدا شد برای مردم افغانستان بخصوص وقتی که جامعه بین‌المللی حضور پیدا کرد.
With the Taliban gone, Kabul's people return. Those who could not tolerate the Taliban's intolerance come home to make a life in the capital again.
After the fall of Taliban, we came to Kabul. So I brought that burqa to wear in Kabul. But when I came to Kabul, many of the women were not wearing burqa because Kabul was not controlled by Taliban anymore. I could go back in the streets without the fear of being whipped by Taliban. And the sense was that at least I can breathe as a human being.
The United States military does a great job at fighting wars, at vanquishing enemies. It's not always so good at figuring out what comes next. And once the Taliban had been pushed out of Kabul and Kandahar and then out of the country writ large, the US military didn't really have a plan for what then. How do you help this country find some stability? How do you help provide basic services? How do you help bring this country into the modern world?
It was not clear directionally what we wanted to do and when we wanted to do it. What we did know is we wanted to be damn sure that whatever developed in Afghanistan, it could never again serve as a base for an attack beyond Afghanistan's borders into our own homeland. And that's where the disagreements started. I felt that, boy, you got to get into nation building if you want that guarantee. You got to have communications lines, roads, good roads, so you can move forces around as you need to, that farmers can get produce to market and so forth and so on. And then you had the minimalist line saying, we don't care about any of this. Let's just not do any, let's just get out. This was the Rumsfeld doctrine. Knock off a regime that you really don't like with the minimum force possible and get out. Don't worry about the rest of it. If we need to come back in a decade, we'll come back in a decade.
In December of 2001, General Tommy Franks, who's the war commander for Afghanistan, is summoned by Rumsfeld, who says, we need to go see President Bush at his ranch in Crawford, Texas. You need to give him the options on Iraq. This is while the Battle of Tora Bora had just ended. Still looking for bin Laden. They're mopping up in Afghanistan. Right away, same general is ordered, we need to escalate planning in Iraq.
Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld met with NATO leaders to discuss ways to fight the war on terrorism.
The only way to deal with the terrorist network that's global is to go after it where it is.
Evidence from intelligence sources, secret communications, and statements by people now in custody reveal that Saddam Hussein aids and protects terrorists, including members of al-Qaeda.
We said very boldly, there is no al-Qaeda relationships in Iraq. And a lot of people said, oh yeah, they are. They're all over Iraq. We might as well take care of them while we're taking care of Afghanistan. Flawed, very flawed.
A lot of these neoconservative, conservative hawks in the Bush administration thought that in the first Gulf War, it was a mistake to leave Saddam Hussein in power, that the United States should have taken him out 10 years earlier and had a chance to and missed it. And so really they saw this as an opportunity to do something about it.
We tried to convince the whole world in the UN that Saddam and bin Laden are working on developing WMDs. That was the speech of Colin Powell.
What I want to bring to your attention today is the potentially much more sinister nexus between Iraq and the al-Qaeda terrorist network, a nexus that combines classic terrorist organizations and modern methods of murder.
We knew at the time that this is baloney. But then we said to ourselves, oh, maybe they have intelligence that we don't have. And later on, we knew where is that intelligence coming from. It was coming from Ibn Sheikh al-Libi. When he got caught, he was tortured and tortured and tortured to admit that bin Laden and Saddam were working together to develop WMDs. Secretary Powell said that the information came from Ibn Sheikh al-Libi.
I can trace the story of a senior terrorist operative telling how Iraq provided training in these weapons to al-Qaeda. Fortunately, this operative is now detained, and he has told his story.
65,000 American troops are now poised in the Persian Gulf. If President Bush gives the order, that number would explode to 250,000 within 3 to 4 weeks.
The United States made our position clear. We could not accept the grave danger of Saddam Hussein and his terrorist allies turning weapons of mass destruction against us or our friends and allies.
The policy of my government, our government, this administration, is regime change.
We will not allow the world's worst leaders to threaten us with the world's worst weapons.
We will not shrink from war.
Inspections are not an end in themselves.
A liberated Iraq could show the power of freedom to transform the Middle East by bringing hope and progress to the lives of millions.
From San Francisco to Oregon to Tampa, protesters rallied against war.
I really think the war against Iraq is wrong.
There was almost unanimous public support to take military action in Afghanistan after 9/11. Iraq was a very different situation. We had not been attacked by Iraq. There was a really impassioned, even bitter at times, public debate over what to do about Iraq, if anything.
Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld said flatly today that however much the Iraqis may deny it, they do have weapons of mass destruction.
Weapons of mass destruction in the hands of Saddam Hussein, plus his known contact with terrorists, including al-Qaeda terrorists, is simply a threat too large to continue to tolerate.
There's no question at all that journalists should have been more skeptical of the Bush administration's sales job on the idea that there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq and that Saddam Hussein was prepared to use them.
The U.S. intelligence community believes that Saddam Hussein has deadly stocks of anthrax, of botulinum toxin, which is one of the most virulent poisons known to man.
He has contacts outside in Sudan and Afghanistan with terrorists. They did indeed have a contact between Atta and an Iraqi diplomat.
We do have solid evidence of the presence in Iraq of al-Qaeda members.
Simply stated, there is no doubt that Saddam Hussein now has weapons of mass destruction.
Oh, the reason I keep insisting that there was a relationship between Iraq and Saddam and al-Qaeda, because there was a relationship between Iraq and al-Qaeda.
Chief UN Weapons Inspector Hans Blix has issued his final report. He says UN inspectors found no evidence of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq.
When we went to Iraq and we realized all the things were baloney, all of it was false. They went back to Ibn Sheikh and said, why did you lie? I said, well, you were torturing me. I gave you what you want.
In May of 2003, Rumsfeld goes to Kabul and declares that major combat operations are over. And this was the same day that Bush went on the aircraft carrier off San Diego to announce mission accomplished in Iraq. So it was this orchestrated moment for the Bush administration to declare on the same day that the wars were over, in effect. And of course, they were completely wrong.
Crews in Iraq have been busy washing the blood off the streets after bombers killed 3 American soldiers and nearly 24 Iraqis.
The main reason we went into Iraq at the time was we thought he had weapons of mass destruction. It turns out he didn't.
It appears that there were not weapons of mass destruction there.
You said you knew where they were.
I did not. I said I knew where suspect sites were, and
You said you knew where they were, near Tikrit, near Baghdad, and north, east, south, and west of there. Those are your words.
The reason we went to Iraq ostensibly was because of Saddam Hussein's weapons of mass destruction, and that clearly turned out to be completely false.
The number of U.S. military deaths has surpassed 2,000.
Not only was it going badly in Iraq, but the whole reason behind it was wrong. Turned out to be not true.
Turns out none of the reasons that were stated or given about going to Iraq turned out to be true.
I think that's a little bit of a hyperbole. It wasn't only about weapons of mass destruction. That wasn't the only reason.
Saddam Hussein is a homicidal dictator who is addicted to weapons of mass destruction.
If he understood the crisis that he has brought down upon himself and his people as a result of his developing these weapons of mass destruction,
he could decide secretly to provide weapons of mass destruction to terrorists for use against us.
They violated the UN resolutions 16 times, 16 different UN resolutions. They did not comply. They didn't let weapons inspectors, so there was a non-compliance with at least 16 different resolutions from the United Nations, and President Bush felt there should be a consequence to that.
Strategic narcissism is the tendency to define the world only in relation to us and to assume that what we do will be decisive to achieving a favorable outcome. And I think while people oftentimes debate, should we have invaded Iraq in 2003, I think it would be more fruitful to debate who the heck thought it would be easy and why did they think it would be easy. Many of the policy decisions that were made in that year from 2003 to 2004 made what was already going to be a very difficult situation much worse.
I wish the intelligence had been different, I guess.
If the intelligence had been right, would there have been an Iraq war?
If he had had weapons of mass destruction, would there have been a war? Absolutely.
No, if you had known he didn't.
Oh, I see what you're saying. You know, that's an interesting question. That is a do-over that I can't do. It's hard for me to speculate.
Looking back on the past 2 decades, I think it's hard to ignore that the invasion of Iraq was in some ways the move that began to unravel the success we're having in the war on terrorism. It wasn't only the invasion that played into bin Laden's narrative that the West, led by the United States, was waging war against Islam and was going to serially invade Muslim lands and occupy them. But I think even more so, the images that were flashed over TV screens throughout the world of Abu Ghraib gave a material dimension to that underscored U.S. claims that they were liberating Iraq.
The military has described these pictures of American soldiers abusing Iraqi prisoners as the misdeeds of a few. But how many people knew what was going on at the Abu Ghraib prison outside Baghdad?
The fact that we ended up invading Iraq has, I think, been heralded by many people as one of the most significant foreign policy errors in American history.
If you look back and you ask yourself, what went wrong? To me, really the biggest turning point was the war in Iraq. I mean, in 2001 and 2002, Afghanistan was like, it was alive, it was hopeful, it was happy. I mean, really, it was amazing. But then what happened was all the resources, all the attention, a lot of the troops, particularly the special forces, everything got moved out. A couple years after that begins the really powerful Taliban resurgence. And those two events are not unconnected.
Now you've got two bad wars going on at once, and the administration struggling to cope with both at the same time. And for the remainder of the Bush administration, Iraq was the focus, and Afghanistan was the afterthought.
They didn't talk English at all around us.
Your next door neighbor could be anything.
Allahu Akbar. I was born in 1948. I had a vision that said, Faisal, you're going to go to America. You will live the rest of your life there. And your role would be to introduce Islam and its spirituality in the American vernacular. America at its ideal is something very precious. This idea of the equality of all human beings is something which is a very profound truth and something which actually expresses the universal value of all religions in the world. After 9/11, I discovered it's at these moments of crisis that we who are seen as spokespeople or leaders of our faith communities need to engage, to explain. And I had a vision of establishing an Islamic community center that would be the Muslim version of a YMCA, with programs like sports, lectures, talks, panel discussions, to bring people from these various faith communities to play together, to get to know each other, to have fun together, etc. And from that comes a sense of community.
There's a massive turnout expected today at a rally protesting the controversial Islamic center that was recently approved to be built just steps from Ground Zero.
This battle over the mosque at Ground Zero.
The mosque at Ground Zero.
The Ground Zero mosque.
The mosque down here on 9/11.
The so-called Ground Zero mosque.
The Ground Zero Mosque.
Fox News knew that calling us the Ground Zero Mosque would arouse the kind of passion that they wanted to arouse. Their arguments were not really coherent.
There is some indication that the building of this mosque is actually a Muslim Brotherhood operation.
We're calling it a 9/11 Sharia recruiting center because that's really what he's doing.
If they put a mosque up right here in the shadow of the World Trade Center before we finish building it back up, what's next?
No mosque, not here, not now, not ever.
No mosque.
The mosque is inappropriate for the suffering and the sensitivities of the 9/11 families.
Well, all this is doing is creating more division, more anger, more hatred.
It's a spit in our face. Go build it uptown somewhere.
We should not be building a mosque to reward the terrorists.
I basically was forced to give up that project. It was painful. It was painful. Because I also knew that it would have been an enormous success. And it would have been a model of how to build communities across differences, celebrating our differences, and yet creating a sense of a community. Imagine if we can solve this problem in America. How much good would result out of it?
We've spent over $600 billion so far, soon to be $1 trillion. We have lost over 4,000 lives. We have seen 30,000 wounded, and most importantly, from a strategic national security perspective, Al-Qaeda is resurgent, stronger now than at any time since 2001. We took our eye off the ball.
When Barack Obama was campaigning for the presidency, this young, charismatic figure who had never served in the military, who had already been clear and on the record that the Iraq War was a mistake and intended, if elected, to withdraw troops from Iraq, he couldn't be seen to be against both wars. So for him, Iraq was the bad war, and Afghanistan was the good war.
The people of Afghanistan seek the promise of a better future. Yet once again, we've seen the hope of a new day darkened by violence and uncertainty.
He embraced the Afghan war as the war that he'd get right.
After 8 years, some of those years in which we did not have, I think, either the resources or the strategy to get the job done, it is my intention to finish the job.
But then what happens? A few months after Obama's inaugurated, the calculus in Afghanistan shifts for him. Stan McChrystal is sent out to Kabul, and he's given orders to assess the situation on the ground and report back. What do you need to turn the tide in Afghanistan?
It's very difficult, and sometimes it requires patience, and sometimes you have to be willing to accept more risk to do it.
He writes highly confidential assessment that includes a recommendation for troop increases. There's a high end asking for 80 to 90,000 additional troops. And there's a mid-level that's in the 30,000 range. And it puts Obama in a box because the president is on the record as saying Afghanistan's the good war. Afghanistan is the war that he's going to turn around. And now the top American general says he doesn't just need 10,000 troops. He needs tens of thousands of troops.
The additional 40,000 would take us to 100,000 American troops in Afghanistan. This is a huge commitment of resources in a time when the economy is struggling or even failing. The new approach was largely centered on the principles of counterinsurgency, or COIN, if you will, terrible acronym, C-O-I-N.
Sangeer, hello. How are you?
So how does that different from counterterrorism?
Counterterrorism is more tactical. It's about preventing attacks. It's about killing or capturing or arresting the bad guys, just generally making it difficult for terrorists to operate and hardening the potential targets that terrorists might strike at. Counterinsurgency is something different. It's not only the prevention of terrorism or prevention of attacks, but it's the recalibration of societies so that the ideology that gives birth to the desire to join extremist movements, to carry out these acts of violence, is somehow channeled in a different direction or changed. Basically, you're trying to remake over societies so that the thought processes that give rise to terrorist recruitment and radicalization are somehow tamped down or somehow eliminated by these profound changes that bring better governance, education, greater literacy, and a higher socioeconomic standard of living.
This then commences a deeply deliberative process for the president and members of his war cabinet. They convene in the White House Situation Room. The table is filled with Obama's top advisors. On his side is Vice President at the time, Joe Biden. Defense Secretary Bob Gates is there. Hillary Clinton, the Secretary of State, is around the table. The CIA director is there. And it's a pretty healthy back and forth, with military leaders arguing that a significant troop commitment is necessary.
Biden and others suggested an alternative, much more narrowly focused on Al-Qaeda. It was a much more narrow objective,
Things could get a little tense at moments. There was really not a whole lot of love lost between the generals and Vice President Biden. And the president's decision is essentially to split the difference between what his generals want and what Vice President Biden is counseling him to do. But he tells the military two things. One, that their mission has to be narrowly focused. The second is that he's only going to surge forces for about 18 months, and then those troops have to start coming home. So he puts a clock on it.
The president also sent a high-powered sales force to Capitol Hill, where they were on the defensive over the president's controversial order to start pulling troops out by July 2011.
I think that's a wrong impression to give our friends. It's the wrong impression to give our enemies. It's the wrong impression to give the men and women who want to go over there and win.
War is a contest of wills. We gave the enemy the timeline for our withdrawal. We told the enemy years in advance exactly the number of troops we were going to have, what the troops would do and wouldn't do. I mean, it's as if we wrote out the script of the war as we would like it to be, and then gave it to our enemy in the hopes that they would adhere to the script.
Professionals, military officers like me, salute and execute. And that's what we did.
I didn't read the news. I didn't know anything about politics. You know, I just knew we were attacked, and I didn't even know by who. Yeah, I didn't even understand the political environment around 9/11. You know, it was just sort of the call to serve, wanting to serve my country. So 10 days after I graduated high school, I got into the Marine Corps, shipped off to Afghanistan. The speech we got from our battalion commander, which was, you know, the eyes of the world are sort of upon you.
It's time to change the game in Afghanistan, to force the Taliban to react to us instead of us reacting to them.
He was trying to instill upon us the gravity of the moment, that this is an historic moment, that this is going to be a significant event in the Afghan war.
You are a part of history.
And that I'm a part of history. Sorry. It would be the largest helicopter insertion since the Vietnam War. It's my first day of combat. I remember every moment of that helicopter ride. You're packed in like sardines. You know, everybody is sort of almost sitting on top of each other. You smell the diesel fuel. You can't even hear yourself think. In the back of our minds were the speeches. People telling us, you know, like, look around. Some of the people that you're standing next to might not be here. So, I mean, we knew we were walking into a gunfight.
By 2009, the Taliban are ascendant. They are on the march. We had these maps that would show who controls what districts within the different provinces of Afghanistan. And the districts are gradually starting to turn the color that we coded it for the Taliban or the other insurgent groups.
The civil-military campaign on which we have embarked in Afghanistan will unfold over the next 18 months. And as many of us have observed, the going is likely to get harder before it gets easier.
July 2nd, 2009. It's quiet for the first 20 or 30 minutes. And then we started taking fire.
Hey, keep moving. Keep moving. We can't stop. Right. Let's go. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going.
They were engaging us at such a distance that I couldn't even see where I was getting shot from.
Let's go. We're in the top.
It sounds like firecrackers, except they're very close to you. We don't know who are the good guys and who are the bad guys. The Taliban, they don't wear uniforms. They blend in with the local populace.
Oh, we know where they're shooting from. We're shooting at it.
They're good at ghosting. But you can't see them. I can't see where they're at shooting.
We get the call that the PJs are coming in, which is pararescue men. If they were coming in, that meant that someone had been shot. The person that had gotten shot was Lance Corporal. Sorry. It was Lance Corporal Charles Seth Sharp of Adairsville, Georgia.
Come on, Sharp. Come on, Sharp. Yeah, that bird. Let's go. Come on, Sharp. Come on, baby. Sharpie. Come on, Sharp.
His squad members are calling out his name, saying, you know, Sharp, wake up. Sharp, wake up. Wake up, Sharp. And he's not waking up. Blood's pouring out under the dirt.
Go. Come on, go. Sharpie.
Finally, they pick him up, and these Marines start running him down the road. They push into a building. The corpsmen start working on him. Sharp bleeds out, so he doesn't make it.
It's 5 minutes. That's fine.
What am I doing here? We had no idea what we were doing. We didn't know what the objective was. I didn't fire a single round until July 31st of 2009. This guy steps out from behind cover with an AK-47, and it was clear as day. So I aimed down on him low, and I literally walked my rounds onto him. I've thought about that day a lot, July 31st. The person that I shot didn't look any older than 15. And I've thought about what put us there in that moment. Who was this person? Were they really Taliban, or were they forced to fight? What if someone was invading my country? Would I take a shot at them?
چه تفاوتی بین اشغال افغانستان توسط اتحاد شوروی و ایالات متحده آمریکا وجود داره؟ اگر تفاوتی هست که او اشغال بخوانیم و ایران عدم اشغال با ما انگیزی که مردم ما علیه اتحاد شوروی جنگیدن، با ما انگیزه افغان‌ها علیه حضور نیروهای آمریکایی در افغانستان جنگیدن. بین این دو جهاد هیچ تفاوتی وجود نداره. بین این دو اشغال هیچ تفاوتی وجود نداره و بین جنگ و مقاومت در برابر دو اشغال هیچ تفاوتی از هیچ ناحیه‌ای هم وجود نداره. اینا دیروز ما را آزادی خواه می‌خواندن و امروز که به خاطر آزادی می‌جنگیم، امو رایی را که ما قبلا انتخاب کرده بودیم، امروز ما را به عنوان دشمن می‌خوانند و تروریست خطاب می‌کنند.
The IED threat was so large that on every tour there were multiple double, triple, and quadruple amputees.
Officials say a U.S. service member died Tuesday from injuries he received in an IED attack in western Afghanistan. His death comes after 7 other U.S. service members were killed in Afghanistan in 3 separate attacks on Monday.
Most of Helmand is mud, and it's very easy to bury an IED, which is basically a yellow water jug full of explosive powder, and then a detonating cap, and then something to ignite it. Very simple to make. The Taliban were claiming they could bury them within 3 or 4 minutes. They would cover the IED in earth, pour water on top of it, and because the sun was so hot, within 5 or 10 minutes, I could literally say to you, there's an IED right in front of you, and there were no indicators whatsoever. No signs that there was an IED there. So every single step you took, you were worried that you might be stepping on an IED. They were in doorways, they were in alleyways, they were in ditches, they were everywhere. You imagine so vividly stepping on one of these things and just having everything blown apart and shredded. It was a horrible, horrible feeling. Because they had to be so careful about IEDs, it would take them hours to travel 2 or 3 miles. And the Taliban could see them coming from a mile off. US Marines had a whole assortment of explosives, including a thing called a miklik, which was like a 30-foot-long sock with a hand grenade every couple of feet.
That was pretty cool.
And that cleared a short path for them to take. That's how they were moving through villages in and around Sangin, regularly destroying Afghans' property, just so they knew they could walk another 30 or 40 feet safely.
It's definitely a f***ing hole, though. Nice f***ing hole. Proud of myself.
That's why so many Afghans, especially in Sangin, said to me, the Taliban don't do this. You guys have been promising security for so long, but it's getting worse, and it was getting worse.
I'm an investigative reporter for the Washington Post. I got a tip that Michael Flynn had given an interview to the Inspector General for Afghanistan about the war. So we thought, well, that's newsworthy. I'd like to see what Flynn said. Flynn had a reputation for being very blunt and forthright. We file a lawsuit in federal court. This takes a while to wind its way through, and they gave us the interview.
You know, every measurable activity is failing. Afghanistan is really better today than it was. You know, the Taliban has completely retaken Marja. They're about to retake Lashkar-Gah.
He's withering in his criticism of how things were really going and how the people in charge of the war weren't being realistic about how things were going on.
And I'm telling you, this is from 2002 until today. Everybody did a great job. We're all doing a great job. Really? So if we're doing such a great job, why does it feel like we're losing?
He's totally contradicting what U.S. officials have been saying in public for years. There was one story in public delivered to the American people year after year after year that things were going well.
Is the U.S. winning the war in Afghanistan? Well, I think that in the last year, we've made a lot of progress.
We have had a great deal of success in achieving the mission.
We are on track to achieve our goals.
Even though these people knew all along there were all these major, major problems that were going to prevent us from winning. Then we find out the Inspector General had interviewed hundreds of other people for the same program called Lessons Learned. We got into a long, drawn-out fight over 3 years with the Inspector General, but in the end, we pried loose notes from more than 400 interviews, a lot of transcripts, some audio recordings, with all these people who had been involved at some level in the war.
You know, we don't invade poor countries to make them rich. We don't invade authoritarian countries to make them democratic. We invade violent countries to make them peaceful, and we clearly failed in Afghanistan.
There was a general from Britain, General David Richards. He was the NATO commander of U.S. NATO forces in Afghanistan in 2006, 2007. His interviews, we did not have a strategy. We did not have a proper strategy. We had a lot of tactics. We didn't have a strategy. He's the war commander saying they didn't have a strategy. Next general who replaces him, General Dan McNeil, U.S. Army 4-star general. We didn't have a strategy. I tried to get people to tell me to define winning before I went over. He's talking about people at the White House or at NATO, and nobody could. We didn't have a strategy. We didn't have a definition of what winning meant. These are the generals in charge of the war. That's astounding to read those comments. That is not what the American people were being told year after year after year. Complete opposite.